This episode covers minutes 41 through 45 of Solo, a Star Wars story, with a special emphasis on chicken in the pot with Ender Smith from AurekFonts. Hello there, and welcome to Star Wars Music Minute, where we celebrate the music and sound of Star Wars 5 cinematic minutes at a time. I'm Chrysanthi Tan, you can call me Xanthi, and today is all about minutes 41 through 45 of Chicken in the Pot. Wow. Of Solo, a Star Wars story. But obviously, we're going to be talking a lot about Chicken in the Pot. This set of minutes starts with Han, Chewie, and Beckett heading over to Dryden's and ends with Han and Kira reuniting. But as discussed already twice, this episode will also kind of be a little bit of a Chicken in the Pot iceberg. And I'm really excited to have Ender Smith from AurekFonts joining me for this extremely nerdy deep dive. Hello.
Hi.
What if this were minutes 41 through 45 of Chicken in the Pot, and Chicken in the Pot were just 45 minutes long?
That might be too long, I think.
So there is a limit to how many times.
Yes.
That's funny because as we were preparing for this episode, as you know, listeners, if you've heard Chicken in the Pot, which you probably have if you're listening to this, you know that it's a little bit of a trippy tune. And in trying to figure it out, I was trying to seek arrangements of it, or see if anyone had done like karaoke track of it or a version of it with just the vocals, just to hear some of the parts a little bit more isolated. And you actually answered the call, and you provided me with some separated tracks, or like a basically instrumental version and basically just the vocals. And so actually, I ended up playing I put some of it on, and I accidentally left my computer, and it played 168 times. So I think
Oh, no.
I think that was Chicken in the Pot, 6 hours.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's warm up to this by I'm going to play a little bit from it as it occurs in the movie. And then I think maybe we can start with some basic background, some maybe behind the scenes, and some of the really basic questions, because we did source listener questions, which a lot of you did ask questions and make some comments, and we will get to all of them that that we can pull up and that we got in time. So with that, let's listen to Chicken in the Pot as it occurs in minutes 41 through 45 of Solo. Okay, I'm being approximate here.
On his yacht.
You're gonna know how to find it?
That won't be a problem.
All right, I obviously started early. But while we're here, secrets theme.
Mm-hmm. And a very, very ominous orchestration of it.
Yeah, for sure. Dee dee dee. Slow version of Han's heroic theme.
That's all I got left.
Checking weapons. That's Pan Party Hard left. Okay. Now we're starting to hear something. Bam. All right. Now we're into it. Okay. So before we get into it, I know you're a really big fan of this.
Yeah. So when I saw Solo in theaters, the moment that the green deep voiced alien sings for the first time was the moment when I was like, okay, I am on board with this movie, because this feels weird and uncomfortable in a way that I think is critically Star Wars is the the unsettlingly weird moments for me really work.
I like that. Critically Star Wars
Yes.
is a hilarious way to put that. I will share that when first of all, back in 2018, I had another music podcast called Underscore, and I'll put a link to it in the show. I'll put a link to the episode I'm about to talk about. And on that podcast, it was about like contemporary music, like new music, and like newer artists kind of blurring the lines between like classical and other genres. And it only lasted like 9, 10, 11 episodes or something like that. But it was like really highly produced. And at the end of it, I would, with my co-host, we would give 4 music recommendations: old, new, borrowed, and blue. And old would be like something old. So I don't know. I can't remember what we did for that episode. I don't know. Let's say Beethoven, some Beethoven piece. For new, it would be like a new piece or something. Borrowed would be like something either sampled or something that was a cover or something, up to interpretation. And blue would be like, again, up to interpretation. It could be something about something blue, like the ocean, or something about something sad, like really up to interpretation. It was a lot of fun. And that was a really fun podcast to do. But that episode I had new, and I picked Chicken in the Pot for that. And I was trying to explain it like back in 2018 on this like classical music podcast. And I was like, so it's this new Star Wars film, and there's this like song that comes in and I can't remember exactly how I described it, but I also was like really charmed by it in a way that I couldn't fully describe at the time.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's interesting, this first clip that you played. It comes in like extremely I think it's high pass, or is it low pass when you strip out the treble?
Low pass, because you're letting the low pass through.
Okay. Yes, that makes sense. Okay. I always get them mixed up, but it's I wonder if we're hearing it from the point of view of the camera or from the point of view of Han in the elevator, because there's another low passed portion of it later on when we're in Dryden's office, and it's much more muffled than it is when we're viewing it from outside of the ship.
Well, we are with Han. The camera is with Han, right? Though, so either way.
I think it's an exterior shot of the elevator going up the ship.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually have many questions about the perspective of like where this is coming from in general, because I feel like I am not sure. I guess I'm not sure what the perspective is, because it doesn't feel consistent to me. And actually, one of my gripes with this scene and is that I don't feel like the song is convincingly mixed for the atmosphere. And when I listen to it, I'm like, it's not that bad. Like, there are definitely like parts that signal, obviously we're listening from outside, now we're listening from inside, but something about it that I'm not sure what it is. And I went back and listened to other examples of diegetic music in Star Wars to feel like, why does this feel like it's more real? But we'll talk about it throughout there. It just doesn't, something about it feels not as real perhaps as it could. But back to this subject of low pass, a low pass filter, as Ender was explaining, is like when you is when there's a filter on a sound, on like a song or whatever, and the low frequencies are what we hear, and the high end of it, like the trebles and everything, are kind of cut off. And that tends to happen when we are like outside of a room, like outside of the club or something. We hear more of the bassy, boomy stuff, and that's simply because like high frequency, like higher frequency waves travel a short, or I have to be careful when I say things like waves traveling and stuff like that. But the frequency means that they die out faster. Low frequency. It's so hard to trap a bass. That's why there's specifically like things that are like called bass traps, because bass can just travel. It's so hard to contain. And so when you're far away from something, you're more likely to hear the bass than you are the treble, the high end. That's what's gonna get absorbed first by the materials. And so being in a different room can absolutely change like how muffled something is, depending on what the materials, the shape of the room, and all that kind of stuff. So first of all, chicken in the pot. Little bit of a behind the scenes. Why don't you answer this? Because I know you know the answer. Multiple people asked, how did it get its name?
Yeah. So this is all going to be based on my understanding of it. John Powell saw the concept art for the green alien, whose name is Luleo Primoc, and he said he thought it looked like a chicken, like a plucked chicken in a tube of liquid, in a pot of liquid, and so he just said chicken in the pot. And I think that there's, from a few of the listener questions, there were some variations of the question trying to determine why that would be the title of the song in universe. For instance, are there chickens in Star Wars? And so I dived into that question a little bit too.
Well, first of all, is it for sure called Chicken in the Pot in universe?
It is called Chicken in the Pot in universe. Actually, I think that's an assumption being made,
because it's worth clarifying, because Cantina Band is called, the Cantina Band songs have different names.
Right. So Luleo Primoc, the alien, was a pre-Clone Wars supper club singer who wrote such hit songs as "Your Love Is Gravy" and "Carve Your Name Into My Heart," which
turkey puns. Yes,
and so I think that given that his other songs are called that, it would not surprise me if if this song is also called something related to foul as food.
Right. Right. So there you go. And as for, or I guess to back up even further, when John Powell wrote this song simply based on the concept art without having seen the scene or anything, because the scene was, it was definitely not ready at the time. And plus, this was one of the first things that he was given the task of doing. Actually, Lord and Miller, the original directors, had given him this assignment early on, like, we're going to need some source music. And so he had started working on this long ago, and all he had to go off of was this concept art. So that was like the only direction he had. So it's interesting how that happens, or the process and the order, like how much information one knows can determine what the prompt ends up being.
Mm-hmm.
So the name of there are two people singing it on screen, and they are Arodia Ventafoli, who is played by Sema Tawi Smart, who also plays Yubiala Gil in The Last Jedi, whom is not, I don't think her name is credited in The Last Jedi, but I'm a Canto Bight fan aficionado. Yubiala Gil is just like in a couple quick shots, and if you have read the Canto Bight book, you know that she's like this sommelier, and so I thought that was really cool. I was like, oh my gosh, it's Yubiala, who no one knows unless you've read the Canto Bight book. And so same actress, and I don't actually Wait, that was a silly question. I was going to say I don't know who played the little chicken, the little chicken guy.
Well, I think that's a reasonable question. I don't know who the puppeteers
Okay, so
are.
it is a puppet.
I think so. I think it looks like a puppet to me. It looks like something that you could achieve with a puppet, and I think when they can, that's kind of what they aim for, at least right now.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And the name of that character, Luli, what is it? I can't say it. What is it?
Luleo Primoc.
Luleo Primoc is a Tuckerization of Louis Prima, or is it Louis Prima?
I think it's Louis Prima.
I think it is too. I think it's Louis.
And
Prima.
his middle name is Leo. So the name is Luleo Primoc, which is barely a Tuckerization.
Oh, that makes more sense. Okay. So yeah. Louis Prima, for those who don't know, is very. I went on a deep dive. I watched this documentary on Louis Prima because I don't know, Star Wars music went it, and he was like a really big deal. First of all, he plays in the Jungle Book. He plays the what's his name? I think his character's literally named Louis.
Yes, I think it's
the king of
Louis,
the swingers of the jungle VIP. That guy. I've reached the top and had to stop, and that's what's bothering me. Okay. So he had a very he had a huge career, and actually he wrote the song "Sing Sing Sing," which Benny Goodman popularized, and Benny Goodman inspired the Cantina Band song. So we have a little bit of so it's kind of coming back on itself. And I remember in A New Hope season, there was an episode when we were talking about the Cantina Band, and I was playing some Benny Goodman examples, and we were talking about Benny Goodman and Sing 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 being possibly temp tracked for Cantina Band, possibly, or if not temp tracked, maybe played on set or something, because the tempo of it really lines up with Cantina Band. But just a thought. Uh-huh. But at the time, and so I'm wrong. If you go back to A New Hope season, I'm pretty sure I attributed Sing 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 to Benny Goodman having written it. But in fact, it was Louis Prima who wrote it and gave the song to Benny Goodman. So it is a Benny Goodman song track, but it's hard to tell with jazz standards because so many people perform them and then might have definitive versions. So sometimes it's hard to get to the bottom of who actually wrote it. And the story of how Louis Prima wrote that song is really interesting and funny. Apparently Louis Prima, a little bit of a tangent, was really into racehorses. To bring it back to Cantovite. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Louis Prima was really into racehorses, and he was, I think, hanging out with Bing Crosby, and Bing had bet on some. How do I remember this from the? Okay, I told myself I was not going to take notes on this so that I wouldn't talk about it. Okay, well, too bad. It's lodged itself in my memory. And Bing would bet on a horse, and Louis Prima had went sing Bing sing, and then changed it immediately wrote it on the spot, basically. Sing 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 wow. Bing sing. But then I think Benny Goodman changed it to Sing 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 instead of Sing Bing sing or something like that. But anyway, that's all to say is Louis Prima is extremely legendary in jazz, swing, really talented band leader, trumpet player, singer, was really known for his stage presence, his really unique stage presence. And he was quite a big deal.
Yeah, so I actually have an interesting question with the Louis Prima information that's available.
Mm-hmm.
Because and I looked this up way too late, and I'm glad that you did a deep dive on Louis Prima, because I didn't think to do it until yesterday. And the on the Wikipedia page for Chicken in the Pot, it
There
has
is a
some
factual
information that is
inaccuracy.
definitely wrong,
Yes.
right?
Yep. I was
Which
hoping
is
this would come up.
right, which is that Prima initially sang that Louis Prima served as the alto temp track. That's point one.
Mm-hmm.
And that he initially sang in a different language. And the second point is definitely wrong
Yes.
because Louis Prima passed away in 1978.
Yes. And yeah. And I looked at the sources that were on Wikipedia and none of them were verifiable.
Okay.
And well, plus he's dead. So full stop. He did not provide the voice on this soundtrack.
Well, right. But what I do wonder is if he was sampled and temp tracked in for that vocal part. And if so, would it be possible to go through his entire catalog and find the snippet that has the melody that might have been sampled?
So I went through his music and tried to find things that were even remotely like this sort of genre, because he did his sound did change over time. Like he didn't stay just in one firm genre, but I couldn't find anything that really felt like it might fit this. Like Louis Prima's music doesn't sound like Chicken in the Pot to me at all. But maybe his voice sounds like the voice we ended up with in the film a little bit, I guess. I don't know, maybe just the range or something. But it's really hard. Like I do remember hearing somewhere, but I can't verify a source. So I don't know if I just got it up from Wikipedia or some other place, that I did hear that maybe something of his was originally temp tracked, if maybe vaguely, because I also know that John Powell wrote a lot of source music. And so there was never one firm direction of it has to be like this. He basically, threw stuff out the wall and did a lot of stuff and presented a lot of ideas. And then eventually Ron Howard picked the ones that he liked. And this was one of them. And so I'm not totally sure. It's possible that he was temp tracked, but also possible that not. Either way, his name for sure is an influence, obviously,
right.
in the character's naming. But other than that, I would be curious what the temp track exactly was as well.
Right. Yeah.
So, any Wikipedia editors listening? Perhaps change that.
I may have some more notes on the page for Wikipedia. We'll see.
We'll have some edits coming for the editors here. I always find it fascinating. I will say, Wikipedia is, first of all, I think wikis and Wikisource information, I think they're they're amazing. And when they're working well, and when there are sources that are linked and everything, it's so awesome. It's awesome what can be crowdsourced in that way. But also I will say that I will say that the music pages are largely a mess, and a lot of the music information is very, very messy. And I say that with a lot of love, because I totally respect what everyone who contributes to Wikipedia does, but it says more about how the language of music and just how things that go on in music production can just be misinterpreted when not filtered through knowledge in the field, I guess, because it's easy to take things from interviews and then kind of that may have been misspoke and not know what parts of that to believe and what parts to fact check.
Right. And I think that's essentially what I was going to get into, is that that a lot of it is people taking statements of the recollection of the production process. And this is a problem actually with a lot of the behind the scenes snippets, apart from who played a character, but even sometimes who played a character in Star Wars, because you're hearing it through people just having a conversation in a lot of cases. or in a documentary where there has been an editor who has gone through after the fact to shorten things and get them down to a nice soundbite length. There's a lot of information that is uncritically reproduced and then never revised in the behind the scenes sections of Wikipedia pages, and it's a, you know, I'm not in a position to say how you should tackle fixing that, because
Yeah, it's kind of a
the
never
fact that it's
ending.
maintained as well as it is
It's a
again,
marvel.
it's amazing,
And
I
I
love
use
it.
it all the time. I think I've like maybe edited one thing on there before, like, but it was just like a typo, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so intimidating. um, the Yeah, that's a whole other that's a whole subject. As someone who writes and interviews people myself, and sometimes has to turn around like an interview with someone, but in text, where I'm kind of paring down their words from like my recording of our Zoom conversation or like in-person interview. Um, I will say there is like a lot of room between like what I put there. There is definitely room for interpretation. I'm sure I've gotten things wrong, and when it's presented as like as it is on like StarWars.com and like any interview with these composers, it's not like they typed their answer back. It's like they gave their answer and then the editors turned it into like a paragraph. So
Mhm.
it's things, yeah. Which is why you sometimes see quotes that are like just shortened in different ways. It's like the same quote, but it might be like still slightly different. But anyway,
Totally.
Okay. So in Powell's own words, in an interview, not in a text version, but on the Resistance broadcast interview that he did, he said he made a bunch of source music examples doing crazier and crazier versions. Yeah. So do you want to talk about the languages?
Yeah. So, and this is another thing where I am going to be interpreting John Powell's conversations for some of this, and my information may contradict what is specifically said on the Chicken in the Pot Wikipedia page,
Mm-hmm.
based on my specific knowledge, which is in the Star Wars conlanging world. So conlangs are constructed languages. So
Okay.
all of
Okay.
Huttese, Mandoa, which is the Mandalorian language, and a whole bunch of other languages are to varying degrees completed and then not completed. There's about 300 and something canonical Huttese words, which is not a lot. So most times that somebody speaks Huttese in the movies, they are adding new words.
So what you're saying is that the lyrics to Chicken in the Pot are in Huttese.
Yes. But everybody thinks that they're in French.
Right. That was another question. That was a question I specifically had for you, because I know that you have done a translation of this based on the sources that you have collected translating certain things. You piece together the lyrics. It's really funny. They're funny, but everyone thinks it sounds French or Portuguese. And I hope you will maybe have some ideas about that.
Yeah. So part of it may be that if you do Google the lyrics for Chicken in the Pot, and you go to genius.com and their account of the lyrics, which is essentially a wiki
For lyrics. Mm-hmm.
for lyrics, there is a transcription of mostly semi-sensical French lyrics that sound that pattern match closely enough that they are included as the lyrics of the song.
Interesting.
And they are definitely wrong, but I do think it's fascinating to compare them with the real ones. So I'm debating whether or not to go on record trying to pronounce French. um, yeah, I won't.
I'll put a link
But
to this genius page.
Yeah, so so the thing is with Huttese is that Huttese was originally based on the Quechua language, and then pronounced by non-native Quechua speakers and re-recorded. And so as words have been added to it over the years, they have mostly stuck to that format. And what's interesting here is that this is pronounced. This Huttese is pronounced more like French with a softened j sound instead of a hard j, and a few other things where consonants are nasalized, and so it is a new set of pronunciation for the language.
Okay, so it might be like the same language, different dialect, maybe, or like different pronunciation. That happens all the time.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm not sure if that came about because the singer or the composer or whoever chose to make it sound French, or because the singer was trying to sound very relaxed. Because Huttese is not marked for its relaxedness
Yeah.
in its pronunciation. It's
like when I hear this, I'm not thinking
it's
Jabba. I'm not thinking Greedo.
right. So let me.
Well, I'm going to say one thing about production just to fill this in. So I will say
Yeah.
that there are actually 3 versions of Chicken in the Pot that were done. And originally John Powell turned in Chicken in the Pot, and he had to, basically they rejected the language that he used. He had found a language online that he says was a Star Wars language, he thought, and he put it in a translator. But he found the language online. And then Disney pointed out, I'm reading from my notes from an interview, Disney pointed out that they might not necessarily own that particular language, even though it's a language from the films, he maintains. So they had to have an official translation to a language that was approved by Disney and owned by the Star Wars franchise, so Huttese. And so Powell then re-recorded it, and that's the version. The second version is the version we got on the original album with the high voice. But either regardless of high voice or low voice, it's the same. It's Huttese. So maybe the original language that he did, maybe it was something that sounded more French. And then when he had to do it in Huttese, he was already like in love with the way it originally sounded. So maybe he tried to kind of retain the original sound of it. Because he is on the record saying that the original version is his favorite version, the version that we've never heard. So,
right. So this is my one contradiction with that version of the narrative as he recalls it and as he recounts it. I think he was translating to Huttese, but through a fan website. And I have some probable guesses, but I won't go on record as pointing out specifically which ones. But the way that he says the way that he describes the site, I'm pretty sure I know which one it is.
Right, because he says he typed in some words and put them in a translator.
Right. Yeah. So and there's only so there's only so many of those sites.
And you would know.
Yes, because I have a problem.
No.
And I have searched all of these things. So my guess is that it's actually probably it was Huttese, is my guess, and that it was probably non-canonical words, because fans also run into the problem of only about 300 words in the entire language, and so they add words that seem reasonable to them, and I know that Leland Chi, who's the Star Wars keeper of the holocron is his job title. They have every occurrence of Huttese logged and on record, so that they can go through and pick out words that have already been created. And then when they run into issues, he's the one who translated Joe Blasto,
Right.
which is
Jingle Bells.
Yes,
not,
Jingle
not
Bells.
Jingle Bells.
Not Jingle Bells, but it is Jingle Bells.
Joe Blasto.
And,
yeah.
Yes. And actually, Luleo Primoc recorded a version of Joe Blasto canonically. So
Right.
ties back in.
Yeah.
Yes. So then he had to re-record it, and I'm guessing it was to remove the non-canonical words or to double check them.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had to re-record it. You mentioned there are 3 versions. Had to re-record it one more time late in production after the CDs had shipped.
Yep.
Or after the version for the CDs had been shipped.
Yep. Actually, let me play some of that. I'll play some of the version that we got on the original CD. So the original album, the Solo: A Star Wars Story album, because that is what came out with the film. And then I think it was like 2 years later that we got the deluxe version that had the other version. So here's the original Chicken in the Pot, the original album version of Chicken in the Pot, which does not match the movie. So you'll note the high-pitched backup singer, or so that high pitch, the that's supposed to be the chicken-looking thing in the pot. That's supposed to be Luleo Primoc, and that's originally what they had until, as Ender mentioned, very late. They were on the dubbing stage. Albums had already shipped. They were, trying to put that voice together and thinking like, I think we would like a lower voice.
Right. So then they actually, it is a different singer. And
Yeah.
I would love to track down all of the credits for each version of the song. I'm not sure if they're available.
Well, the original version, I think, is the same lead singer, right? It's Baraka
Yes.
May. And then for the high-pitched version, originally, I either want to say it's her again, or I'm not sure, because there is a credited singer for the lower voice when that comes in later, and that's Reed Bruton. I think I'm saying that right. And there is not another singer credited for the original high voice. As for or original, like version 2, which is the version on the original album. The other version I'm considering just like a demo version, because it's not. Yeah, the version that was never released. Yeah, I think it's probably
and it will
the same
likely
singer.
never be released.
Right. Yeah.
So then for as far as in-universe justification for the French pronunciation. Oh yeah, so I want to demonstrate kind of the difference in the traditional Huttese pronunciation versus the pronunciation in this song. And it's just going to be me saying it, but most of the time it would be pronounced like Giseta Hamburgo, whereas here it is like Giseta Hamburgo, which so they have changed the pronunciation, and I'm choosing to believe that since Twi'leks from Ryloth apparently have French accents in the animated shows.
Yeah, it's true.
That this is the Ryloth pronunciation.
Oh.
There's no basis for that at all, besides vibes.
Okay,
So
now this is bringing this. Okay, now this is interesting because one comment I have is that we often, even like in English and everything, just in any language, the way that things are sung, and also even depending on the genre, can sometimes contradict the way that even the same people speak them. You know,
that's true.
so that already can that can explain away a lot if you choose. But also, I think about accents in Star Wars a lot, and um, thinking about the French analog type of accent. I mean, the place we normally see it is like Ryloth with Twi'leks, and in the Star Wars universe, the RP or like British, especially RP British English is Coruscanti, right?
Hmm.
It's Coruscanti accent, so it's like very like high society and people of a certain status. And I think on Earth, hearing like a French accent in something probably sounds like not necessarily high status to the same level as someone would hear an RP British accent and think monarchy. But I
Hmm.
think you do hear, I think there is something that sounds appealing about a French accent on Earth.
At
And
least in an American paradigm.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But in Star Wars,
Oh, that's
Ryloth
a
is
good
not
point.
it's not depicted as like a sexy place like France is to Americans here. So,
Right. Yeah, that's a good
however,
point.
but Twi'leks are still exotified. So there is still like potential for that French, borrowing or something. But yeah, Ryloth, it definitely is not portrayed in an analogous way as like Paris is.
Right. That's very true. Yeah. So I mean, make of it what you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no given justification. So believe whatever you want until they make a story about the writing of chicken in the pot.
So she sings Je sais ta hamburgo. What does that mean?
Well, so yes, the lyrics and translation is Jisata Mbogo, which is I say hamburger, and then Doseta Hamburgo, which is you say hamburger. And filling in those, this is, I should clarify, this is me going through a list of Huttese words and trying to sound match them, and then also trying to make the grammar make sense. So, which Huttese has random or nonsense grammar. Like there's no rules for it, but I'm just trying to. Again, it's a lot of vibes. Those are probably the words for those two lines.
Yeah,
And
and
then
I think
I reach points with
I believe it because in context with the other words that you sounded out, it all adds up. So continue, please.
right. So what I think is interesting. So I've been trying to get a translation of this for. I should clarify. I've been getting a translation of this for like working on translating this for probably since the movie came out. I started looking up bootleg recordings of the song in the film to try and figure it out. And Leland Chi, the holocron keeper, actually responded to me once with the Huttese words for hamburger, cucumber, bolognese, and mayonnaise, which all appear in this song for the first time. So then it's Doku Dava Lakajo. And most of those words.
That part?
Right. So that's Luleo's part. And the only word out of that I can translate for certain is laka, which means to eat. But what's really interesting about that is that is actually a non-canonical Huttese word. And
that made
so it
its way
does
to
make me
canon?
wonder. Right. So it makes me wonder if some of the words from the original, from that first version, did make it past approval, and they said,
Let's
"That's close
canonize
enough."
it. Yeah.
Yeah, let's make that one canon. We won't use all of them,
Yeah.
but we'll use some of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then so the verses are kind of structured like this, where it says, "I say a type of food, you say a type of food," and then something about eating, and then I say
like I say
cucumber,
tomato, you say tomato.
except it's pronounced the same
Yeah,
both
that's true.
times. So I don't.
I say tomato, you say tomato. Isn't that nice?
Right.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. And then by the chorus we get the really interesting part to me. So it's patisa que fondo, which is friend hungry. So I don't know if that is meaning a hungry friend. Or if it's tied to the next line, which is gistuka, or sorry, gistuka ma. Sorry, I'm trying to get this right. And then so it's gistuka mishka laka, or sorry, mishka laka you.
Oh, which you
yeah,
said laka means to eat.
Right, and actually, I my notes are wrong. I tried to pull this from another one of my files, and I lost some words in there. Yeah, so it's translating word by word. I see or look sweet to eat you. So I don't know if it's literally saying, like, you look good enough to eat, or which would fit with he looks like a chicken in a pot.
Or it's like a sex thing.
Or if it's a sex thing, it can absolutely be a sex thing.
Right. Yeah.
Which only gets more upsetting as we move on into the second verse, where it says, "Gisata bolognese," which is bolognese, or "Gisata mayanai." So if it is a sex thing, it's a
They're
thing.
doing food play. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's hamburger, cucumber, bolognese, mayonnaise.
Yes, and then you look good enough to eat. So there you have it. That's the big mystery of the song.
Well, see, I think it's a sex thing because when in the chorus they're harmonizing, they're singing together. They're going,
yes, yes. I think that's a reasonable interpretation.
I like it. This is hard hitting content right here. It's
yes,
crucial.
Yeah. So I also wanted to mention on the structure of the song. So it's a call and response for the verses, where there are two lines sung by Arodia, and then one line sung by Luleo, and his lines are the same for both verses. And then there's another two lines sang by Arodia, and then his second line per verse. And then during the chorus, they harmonize, and they actually trade off mid-word, which is interesting. Because Mishka is one word, and Stuka is one word, and they sing Chistuka Kamishka Laka you. So I think that's interesting, and maybe an artifact of none of these people actually speak this language, and so like in the real world, very few people actually speak Huttese, and probably none of the people involved in the recording are fluent in Huttese. And so there's also
reasonable assumption.
There's also I think a pronunciation different. There's one misspoken word that I have chosen to translate as the same word. On the first verse, it's Jisa ta hamburgo, and then she says in the recording Jisega kukumbo for the second time through
instead of seta.
And right, and I've chosen since
Is it
every
on
other
both
time
versions?
it is on both versions because she wasn't re-recorded.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, wait, let's listen to the harmonizing part so you can hear when they trade off the word.
I think back a little bit.
Okay. I'll go back a little bit. Here we go. So they both say the syllable.
Right.
Oh, yeah, okay. Jastuka, Gamishka.
Right. And then if you play it back one more time, he says it on the end. If you start right where you paused, he says that line again without repeating the ka sound.
Did I pass it?
Oh, just barely. One more time. Where he says Jistuka Mishkalaka you. And
right.
doesn't repeat.
So you know the redundancy is a redundancy.
Yep.
Oh, good detective work. Wow. You went through that with a fine-tooth comb.
I want to be able, so my goal through all of this is that I want to be able to play these songs. And I think the last diegetic song with lyrics that has ever been published was Jedi Rock from Return of the Jedi Special Edition.
Yeah.
I think that's the last time with
Jedi
lyrics.
Life-changing. That's a song of childhood right there.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, can't wait to get to Return of the Jedi season because Jedi Rocks is my version. Okay. So okay. So so we talked about the language. I asked people what they thought it sounded, or I guess the language kind of ties into a topic, or I guess a conversation about the genre of it, because a lot of people, or not a lot, but I will say more than one person did say that it sounds vaguely like bossa nova or something, which I don't agree with on the whole, but if you consider maybe the way that the vocals sound and the pronunciation and maybe the overall like sexy vibes, lounge vibes, tempo, strings, like I can also hear it, you know?
Yeah. And I think, yeah, it's so interesting when you ask people what they think something sounds like, because you can only compare things to what you are familiar enough with to have a mental like map of that thing. And there's a meme of the so we come in on the person who has only watched the film Boss Baby watching any other film, and his response is picking up a lot of Boss Baby vibes. because
That's so good.
If something is your only point of reference, then you are more likely to use that as a point of reference. And as you build out your points of reference and you have different things to compare it to. And so if you have played bossa nova, this may not sound like bossa nova to you. But but it is, I think, definitely a lounge music style, or can fit into that style. Although in classic Star Wars diegetic music fashion, the instrumentation is very different from uh, what you would typically expect, with the highly distorted bass line,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, and I think a drum sequence rather than.
Yes. Okay, so I like what you said about the boss baby. I like the boss baby. I like the boss baby thing a lot. It reminds me of a probably a paper or something that I read years ago, and I think it may have been in the Journal of Musicology, a broader view of musical exoticism. It may have been that, or it may have been like um, something else about genre. And I wish I could remember it, because I really would like to find the quote again. But it definitely, like, it has stuck with me since whenever I wrote this paper, 2017. And it something about like the categories that we make in our mind, basically being limited to what we know. And so, when it, in the topic of like when people call world music like world music, it's because, well, they haven't built out categories of like different parts of the world. And then they don't have the concept of breaking those categories into further categories. So to someone who's never heard music outside of what is from their hyper local area or something, or just pop radio or something, you might hear like vastly different music cultures from anywhere else, and you might just think like, oh, it's all world music, because you haven't built those categories. You can't even
Right.
conceive of them. So it's like the boss baby thing.
Yes. Yeah. And I I think a concept that you've already touched on with the Enfys Nest theme,
Mm-hmm.
and how to many Western ears that sounds a particular way, and because you've had more training in that genre,
Yeah.
it's more like, okay, but what does it say? Because that, like,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
it could be about a lot of different things,
Yeah.
rather than a
Yeah.
battle cry war song that it sounds like to me, frankly.
Right, because, well, the more deep you are into a genre, the less effective just using the genre as an immediate signifier is. Like, you don't get the trope when you're so deep into it, which is just a general problem that I have when musical scores or films rely heavily on the use of tropes to signify things, because I don't think tropes in themselves are bad. Things become tropes for reasons, but using tropes so much, it kind of assumes that your audience will get the signal, that will understand the
Right.
cultural context. And there's so much cultural context that, for vast reasons, I don't immediately get. And so that's why a lot of things don't work on me on that level, just because I'm not getting, like, I don't get the joke, or I'm not getting the context or what makes it. And the more deep you get into music, the probably sometimes the less effective certain types of tropes are going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what?
Did,
Go ahead.
go ahead. Oh no, it's all you.
I was gonna ask you, like, what genre would you think this is? 'Cause I also pulled a few like quotes from the internet of ways that other people have described this. I just think it's interesting to talk about like how different people are framing this music.
Yeah, so I think that the very bass forward sound makes me think of a different trope, which is the sexy porno bass trope. That is a shorthand, usually in jokes, about things about things being sexy, and I think it comes from like 70s porno films. And so it's actually just 70s slap bass style.
Mm-hmm.
But also I think that the texture of the song, um, and the sort of looping nature of it, uh, and the vocal style, like there's so many things to it. I think I interpret it as a lounge, like like you would find at a 40s jazz club. Uh,
Okay, so lounge. Okay, maybe we can just all throw. Maybe we can. Okay, let's try to describe this.
yeah.
So, like listeners, also maybe you can think and maybe you can tweet us while you're listening. Tweet us while you're listening to this. What does chicken in the pot sound like to you? And don't worry about being too accurate or whatever, because these things are all fuzzy. Just like lounge, I'm getting lounge vibes for sure. Whatever that means, I'm not even exactly sure, but it's just a feeling that I get. And there is sort of a down tempo nature to it, like a slinkiness. And I have seen people like use that word in the context of the singer's voice. It's like slinky, sultry,
Mm-hmm.
kind of jazzy, smooth. It's definitely more smooth and connected than not. There's the pronunciation, which factors into it. Like the syllables are drawn out. You know, it kind of leads to like
Mm-hmm.
sustains, like long.
Yeah, there's one line in particular that is definitely out of the pocket, during the chorus, which is
Define
just
out of
that
the pocket.
So here it means that she's singing, I think, after the beat. So rather than singing perfectly in time with a click track or with a metronome, she's actually singing her notes just after, and it's a micro rhythmic difference. So it's not enough of a difference to be it's on a different beat, but it is just far enough that we feel it a different way.
Yeah.
And
okay. This is like this is going to spawn a whole other part of the conversation that we have to come back to, which is how we can conceive, different ways we can imagine that in universe, the characters are imagining what this song is and what it looks like in sheet music, or how they're interpreting it, because it is by even saying like it's off of some sort of a beat, we're making assumptions about the way that they're conceiving of beats in general.
That's true.
and a similar conversation can be said of the pitches, which we'll get into later, where there's like kind of microtonal, what we call like microtonal moments. But in general, like just listeners, if you've never heard the term before, like in the pocket, like, and out of the pocket refers to like basically just how on the beat you are. And so when you're playing, like in an ensemble, you might hear like the band leader be like, I don't know, that drummer, like they're really playing like in the pocket, like, and that really on beat, like really, if you're really feeling something and you're really well timed or something, it might be a compliment, like, wow, you're playing really in the pocket. I don't know. But out of the pocket, it's not necessarily bad. It just refers to like if something being more free, like, I don't know, maybe you could call it rubato and other types of music. But it is a rhythmic designation or description. So,
and here I do think that it is being used as an expressive technique, rather than, I don't think it is. I do not think it is wrong that it is out of the pocket.
Oh yeah, I don't think you think it is either. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. I think all this stuff can come down. A lot of this stuff can come down to emotional interpretation, musical interpretation, etc. How do we get on the subject? What were we talking about? Oh yeah, the genre. Okay, so I heard I saw on Twitter someone at Drum Jedi called this Star Wars Sade. So
Okay.
that Sade I think Sade is a singer who I know like one famous song. Wow, this is like one. Okay, Sade. Well, I looked up Sade 90s. Okay, there we go. British singer. Basically she has a very like sultry, smooth voice. And as soon as I saw that comment, something about it, even though like obviously I don't know the most about Sade, considering I just had to look up, something about it felt like, oh yeah, what I remember about Sade feels accurate. Okay, I'm looking on Wikipedia. Their music features elements of soul, quiet storm, smooth jazz, and sophistopop. And I will say this sounds sophisticated. Chicken in the Pot sounds sophisticated.
And a little bit jazzy, I think.
Yeah.
It's definitely got some upper extensions, right?
I think if I were to call this any particular genre, I personally would call it trip hop.
Oh,
And trip hop is probably like if you've ever heard like Massive Attack or Portishead, or even honestly a lot of Bjork, specifically like her Homogenic album and other stuff too. Like she does a lot of trip hop, I would guess. It's a style of music that emerged in Bristol in the early 90s. And I'm looking, according to the Wikipedia page, like, you know, if you've never heard Massive Attack or Portishead, which I hope you check them out because they're awesome. If you want like a little bit more of a definition, okay, it's described as a fusion of hip hop and electronica until neither genre is recognizable, with slower tempos and a psychedelic sound. It may incorporate elements of funk, which I would say this definitely incorporates elements of funk. I would actually say this is probably trip hop plus funk. With slower, it may incorporate elements of funk, dub, soul, jazz, R&B, and other forms of electronic music, as well as sampling from movie soundtracks and other eclectic sources. I have a theory about Chicken in the Pot too. I think it samples. I think it samples those strings from something else. Okay, so common musical aesthetics include a bass-heavy drum beat, often providing the slowed-down breakbeat samples similar to the standard 90s hip-hop beats, giving the genre a more psychedelic and mainstream feel. Vocals in trip hop are often female and feature characteristics of various singing styles, including R&B, jazz, and rock. The female-dominant vocals of trip hop may be partially attributable to the influences of genres such as jazz and early R&B, in which female vocalists were the most common. I ran this morning. I ran this by the band batch. James Waterman and Justin Scheid, my friends who live stream on the Star Wars Music Minute channel with me, and I just asked them point blank, like, what genre would you consider Chicken in the Pot? And Justin immediately responded, it's pretty reminiscent trip hop to me, has a Portishead feel to it, which I was like, me too. And then immediately James answered electro funk, which was like, wow, you two just summed up exactly what I thought it was. And yeah, Justin says the bass is very funk, but the beat and sampling is very trip hop. And I was like, see, I think those strings are sampled. And then James is like, yeah, the vibe and beat sounds a lot like Portishead, but they're not known to use slap bass, which you pointed out makes me think of Parliament or George Clinton. And then he also said the vocal harmonies sound like Sergio Mendes. I'll also note that I think the bass aspects of it sound like a Childish Gambino track called Redbone. And I also think just my other theory, by the way, now we're, which is kind of silly, but also kind of not, because as we try to make sense of like how these pieces of source music fit into the Star Wars universe, whether it's accents or the styles of music, I feel like this use of bass here, which is definitely, I think, the first time we heard bass like this in Star Wars, and you would say so too, right?
I think so, yeah.
Like, I feel like this is a gateway to what we hear in Book of Boba Fett in the mod parlor with that bass.
Yes. Yes, I think that's right. Yeah, I think that your summary and the band batch's summary is pretty dead on, and I think that I think that what's uh, why so many people default to lounge, myself included, is because of the context of the scene itself coloring what we're hearing, because this is more like a context in which you would find a lounge singer than in which you would find electronica music playing of any variety. You know, that it's supposed to feel like this classy establishment through all the visual indicators of, people drinking out of fancy glasses
Well, I don't
and
think.
wearing like tuxedos.
Well, I think trip hop is actually very common in certain types of lounges. Like there is a big genre of quote unquote world music, like exotic. I think the music. Justin shared it with me. Okay, there is. Okay, there is like an album called Exotica, um, and there are also things like Buddha Bar, and like there's this whole market of like down tempo, trip hoppy, vaguely world music-y lounge music, and it actually is
Mhm.
super popular. And it might not be like place it's super popular but not necessarily mainstream, if that makes sense. I think because
Mhm.
I think like I know my mom for sure like has listened to a lot of this stuff where I'm like,
Uh-huh.
she wouldn't know that she's listening to trip hop or like something that is electronica adjacent. Like it doesn't read that way. It's more like on anyone just put on like a chill out playlist, put on a
Uh-huh.
chill out lo-fi playlist, put on just like putting certain keywords, and you'll find kind of stuff that crosses over between like electronic, ambient, jazzy, kind of sampling,
Yeah.
chill
I, I, I
wave.
think when people say lounge music, at least this is my interpretation again, because I only have certain points of contact with certain genres of music. Um, uh, I think what I associate with that is a specific era and style,
Mm.
which is
You said 40s.
right. So like,
Speakeasy.
yeah, like a speakeasy sort of sound, but often uh, uh, there's a there's a singer, and I can't think of his name. I think it is Richard Cheese is his stage name.
Hmm.
Um, who does comedy lounge albums that are taking the concept of lounge, and like he'll do Down with the Sickness in the style of like the image is of a singer who is also drinking a martini while singing, you know, so like a very specific vibe and era. um
That makes
and
sense.
and I think that the context clues here lead people to say lounge, but I do think that the music is much more contemporary, you know, than than
40s.
what right than 40s.
Yes, and yeah, I mean, but I think there is still some truth. But what you said about the context, like it matters a lot because
Yes.
these things like happen subconsciously. The context sways. Like most of the time, I feel like we humans go through life not actually knowing why we think and feel the way that we do. Even if we think that we know why we think things, we don't actually know. We don't know. We don't. There's no way we can quantify all of the different influences that are seeping
Mm-hmm.
in. You just can't. Um, and something that I think gives this a very like old world sound in a way is the strings. Um, the strings sound like they're sampled from the 60s or 70s, like 60s or
Mm-hmm.
70s soul pop, even like film music. I mean, I don't know,
Yes.
thinking like Moon River or like,
Yeah, actually I have a really great example of the type of strings, and
Mhm.
it's actually the I would have to do like 3 Google searches to get to the name of the film, but there was music sampled for. I saw a clip illustrating where the samples came from for "Toxic" by Britney Spears.
Oh,
And in context, it's very much this style of like planing
right.
chord strings, which then they chop up and they turn parts of it backward and they, you know,
So
syncopate it and
in
everything.
Toxic, when you like do 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 you mean that part?
Yes.
Okay, so there are lots of elements of that that I feel like I definitely hear from that, like the tightness of the strings together, and there is something about it. I would say it's more like monophonic in that sense, where like all the strings are
Mhm.
playing the same note. And here there are elements like maybe in the way it's mixed, maybe just in the way it's compressed, maybe in the way that it's just not like so clearly polyphonic, like or sorry, not
Uh-huh.
the way that it's like strings playing different rhythms, like all forming this like complex thing. It's like all the strings in Chicken in the Pot are playing together. They're playing at the same time. They're playing different
Mhm.
notes, but they're playing at the same time. And there are so many different like types of ways to arrange for strings and or make textures in with instruments. And this to me feels very like a chord. It's a very chordal texture, where like you said, planing, like the parallel. There's a it's a lot of planing chords. It's a lot of planing chords, meaning like this. Your hand shape on the piano stays the same, like everything moves by the same increments, but it's not always, they're not always planing. And I think like when I started to really write it out, there was like there was a lot of planing, but it wasn't always planing. But even when it wasn't planing, something about it sounded super cohesive in the way that planing sometimes can be. And I think it's just because even one not planing, it's it's chordal. It's chordal movement.
Right.
Like we're going to two different chords every single note, and every note is moving. You're not having like oftentimes when you are make harmonizing, like if you think of a chorale, the really typical like old school chorale texture, you will have certain no, you'll have certain singers stay on a note because the chord can change around them. You could have like, and some of the notes can just stay the same. But here it's more like, well, let me play it. Let me play a little bit. So we're about to hear a little bit. When they come in, it's super obvious. Okay. And compressed. Listen for that. About. So it's almost like there are some robust like pedals and samplers and things that can do stuff like this. Like they're all moving together. They're a unit. They're all playing different notes, but you're not really hearing like, oh, that's 4 different violins and 3. Like you're hearing the strings as a unit. They're a unit. Point is, they're a unit. They're all together.
Yeah. So something interesting about the strings, and I actually why I really like your sample theory is that they are. I don't know for certain what key you would say that the song is in, but the strings are not consistently in that key.
Yeah.
They are not playing in the same key as the singers are singing in, or that the bass is occupying.
Yeah. That's
And
why I was.
it's hard because it's a chord loop, which doesn't necessarily have a key in the traditional Western classical music sense. But
Yeah. So that's why I was like curious to double check against the separated versions. So let me actually just play some. So this is without the singers. And so when the singers come on, dee 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 dee, dee 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 dee, dee 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 dee. So that sounds like it's in, but this is not strings. Dee 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 dee, dee 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 dee. That was wrong. Dee 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 dee. So when the strings come in, dee 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 dee. That part. This part. It's like the more I listen to it, the more consonant it actually sounds. Like the more I listen to it, the more ruined my perception of what doesn't fit. It fits more and more the more I hear it. So it's hard to hear the parts that initially didn't feel like they fit.
Right.
But,
yes.
But I'm going to play a little bit. Okay, we're getting like a little bit. There's no better place than here to do this. Okay, so I'm going to play a little bit from Stormtrooper JP 0554 karaoke. So this is the piece of source music that happens after this. So we talk about it next week. It's like Han, Kira, Dryden. So it's, okay, so I'm going to skip a little bit earlier than that now. We hear some strings. Bam. That's the chicken in the pot strings right there.
Yeah, that's an identical sample there.
Yes.
It has to be a sample.
Yes. But which one is, but that begs the question, because it sounds it doesn't sound completely, it sounds like it could be sampled in either version or both. So in my head, I've been like thinking about this all morning. Yes. Okay, so there's a few different ways this could go. Is like those strings were originally just part of the Stormtrooper karaoke and then sampled in Chicken in the Pot, or they're originally from Chicken in the Pot, sampled in Stormtrooper karaoke. Either way, they both have that exact same string line. It's the same thing. John Powell probably just had the same sample and just put it in both. Or not sample, but he recorded it, but put it in both. Stormtrooper karaoke was like one of the last things, probably the last thing he turned in, and he sang it himself. He's singing the Stormtrooper part. Like he just had to do that really fast, so he had to just pull from what he already had and stuff. So that was like thrown together very quickly. So the third option, which I think this might be it, is there's this whole other piece of music that we haven't heard yet, and that's where the strings come from, and it's sampled in both.
I'm going to present theory number 4.
Go for it.
It's even harder to reconcile. So there have been multiple people who have brought up the question of, are the strings even diegetic? So that's another part of it. Is it part of the song that the characters are hearing? Or are the strings part of the score that just overlap over the top of the song? And some people have cited that you don't see the strings, like that there's no source for the strings, and I would argue that you also don't see the source for the bass or the drums or the anything else. So we'll set that aside. But somebody on the train heist episode,
that was Frank Lehman. Yep. We did talk about a part that maybe was a precursor to Chicken in the Pot with slinky strings.
Yeah. So what I wonder is if those strings are sampled from himself from
Like if they're
from
meant to be
another
score.
well, there's they could be part of the score, or he could have sampled the score of Solo at some iteration and used the strings as a sample from another track that may not have made it into the final version. But since I don't know.
So this is more of a meta explanation. It's not an in-universe explanation. In other words.
Well, it makes more complicated the in-universe explanation.
Right. Okay.
Because I personally think that the strings are audible to the characters in the scene.
Me too. I don't think the strings are part of. I don't think the strings are score or like non-diegetic score.
Right. But I do wonder if they are sampled from the score, which
I don't think so.
No.
My guess is no, just because the tempo, like it's hard to like honestly, sometimes when I'm like making my own music and I'm trying to like sample my own things, the amount of work it takes to get a sample to fit into something and smoothly, like with the timing and everything, with the clean recording, and it feels like it's bespoke to Chicken in the Pot. It really does. Honestly, a lot of the time I'm like, oh, it's so much work to sample. I'm just going to re-record it, like, and then make sure, do a clean recording or it's like inspired by something. But I don't know, sampling, it's like a little too perfect for me, in my opinion, to be a sample. Plus, because it's not just that one, there are a few different stingers, like there are a few different parts. And even a part where like the note changes, like the string note changes on one part. I will say that I wonder if there's some like auto tune on some of the strings, or there is something about the way the strings are mixed, and I don't know, it maybe is meant to be reminiscent of that 60s, 70s, like very compressed style. I think it's really evocative. I mean, it really like, but yeah, I just like the glissando, like the slides in the strings, they just like feel so perfect to Chicken in the Pot's sultry, slinky vibe. But the question about whether, but the question that I saw on Twitter, people responded to, because we like, we had a tweet that was like, ask us questions. So if you're listening to this episode, it's obviously too late, but hopefully we answered a lot of questions anyway that you have. But yeah, it was Elijah Sawyer 7 who said, I have this theory, I'm not sure if it holds water, where the vocals are obviously intended to be diegetic, and in universe, the strings have no obvious source and sound very similar to the film's main score. Could it be that they aren't part of the performance? And Louis Mantia Jr. said, where are the strings coming from? And there are no visible non-singing musicians on stage. And so, yeah, let's talk about that. It is common, first of all. I think they're just playing to a backing track. There's no budget, there's no space to bring the full band. Plus, because if this is like sampled and there's a lot more there's obviously like a lot more production on this track than there is on like Cantina Band, which sounds like it sounds like live, and you can imagine it's all being played live. Like I can just imagine that. It sounds, and maybe that's why that particular sounds like a more live experience to me, because it literally is live. Canto Bight feels a little bit live to me too. This feels to me like singers singing to a track, and maybe that's why it feels less immersively live to me, because it's not live. Like in universe, it's not fully live.
Yeah, I could see that. I definitely do think that it is just a backing track, and I hold a pet theory that Luleo, with his tendrils up at the top of his tank, is actually like hitting play on their backing tracks. But apart from that, yeah, I think it's entirely. Now, we don't see any speakers either, apart from their multi-vocoders or
yeah,
whatever.
So that is that's another big question that I had, which like maybe this would be actually a good time to listen to it again in the context of the film, so that you can
Yeah.
hear the way that it's mixed, and keep in mind that like while this is happening, we are like shifting perspective a little bit. Like it's not all taking place in one static location. Okay, so I'm gonna turn the volume up. Okay. Started too early again, but that's fine. We'll get into it.
I do want to say I like how clacky their weapons that they're checking sound. I've always liked the sound of handling weapons in Star Wars. They have a very Foley artist heavy.
Yeah. I like the way that doors sounds. That's so we
Oh,
get
yeah.
that too. Okay, here we go. So now they're inside. They're actually like going in right now.
I love this droid sound.
I'm here to see
It's a little
Dryden.
softer, obviously,
He'll be with you shortly. He's just finishing with the region.
because we're zooming in on the dialogue.
And then
New
now we're
room.
in a different room.
Yep.
Excuse me, sir. Beckett has arrived.
Put this in my office. I might be needing it later.
See, notice how we can just hear like the booming bass, basically.
I get all worked up. Silly. It's a party.
Now we're suddenly back to the other room.
Hey, these people are not your friends. They're never gonna be, so don't talk to any of them. Don't look at anybody, just keep your eyes down. I'm gonna get a drink.
Smell.
Okay. So,
Yeah, whatever.
I guess it's hard to. It's perhaps harder to explain what I'm trying to explain without seeing the visuals. But even though it sounds like there are a lot of shifts in the music, it doesn't feel like the panning doesn't change as much as I would maybe expect, or like it feels like. And I will say, when I first saw Solo, it actually didn't occur to me that the people we saw on screen, namely this chicken and the Arodia, were the performers. Like, partially because their mouths are, or like her mouth is obscured by the filter that she's wearing, the vocoder, but it just sounds so immersive and perfect. Like, I don't know, just live performances don't sound that good. But unless maybe most of it is not live, I mean, which is, I think that goes to the theory of, there's just a backing track and there must be like some immersive, must be some technology on this yacht that's like just the entire like the ceiling and wall, like it's all a speaker. Or like there's a very central speaker. I mean, the room's pretty small, so I mean, it's medium and it's kind of circular. So maybe the speakers are coming from like maybe they're like maybe the speakers are like a crown at the top or something. But it sounds very like full coverage.
Mm-hmm. I do wonder how you had a guest who talked about the Dolby Atmos thing.
There might be something that we're missing.
I'm going to do some homework for you because next weekend I will have access to a Dolby Atmos speaker setup.
Whoa!
And I can double check this for you.
Whoa! Oh yeah, it'd be so fascinating
to see how it's mixed in the space.
Yeah, it always does
Because
occur
I
to me.
don't
Sometimes
know.
when I feel like the mixing is off, I'm like, there's probably context that I'm missing, maybe.
Yeah, because you only get to hear it in the and I've thought about this a lot. There's a lot of push to that you should only see movies in theaters,
Yeah.
and I think that even if that's your desire, it's not the reality because most movies will be seen most times by most people
Yeah.
at home
Yeah.
sitting on their couch, you know.
Yeah.
For me it was on VHS, which is even lower quality, mono sound out of a little VHS or VCR slash screen all in one thing is how I watched a lot of movies growing up.
Hmm.
And and so it's I wonder what is like what the solution is to how you mix things, because you want the theater experience to be special and unique and a huge experience. But I think that, is there some planning that you need to put into the fact that most people will watch it more times at home?
Yeah. I'm so glad I'm not the person who works on that, but
Yes,
I mean, I know they do
please.
different mixes for sure, but also still there's so much variety in terms of what people have at home. Some people literally have 5.1 Dolby at home, which
Mhm.
is still not theater quality, but is more than just it's more than just having your built-in TV speaker and more than just watching something on your iPad. Honestly, I just moved a month ago and I don't have a TV set up. Like I watched one movie, I watched it on my iPad. Um, and even if people have a sound bar, that is definitely not like, that's not the upgrade that's not, it's still, you're still closer to the home, just like the janky home version than you are to the theater experience. So yeah, I'm very curious how, yeah, I'm very curious about that. Um, yeah.
Yeah, so um, I think the next thing for me is because we haven't talked about it, and I feel like it's one of the most notable aspects of the song that I don't know if other people pick up on it immediately, or because I didn't really know for sure until I sat down to transcribe the song. Uh, is that Arodia sings notes that do not line up with the keys on a piano,
Mm-hmm.
that are microtonally flat or sharp or somewhere in between,
Mm-hmm.
a lot in this song.
Good segue. Okay. So, oh gosh, okay. So in, I guess, Western tonal music, we tend to think of there being 12 discrete notes: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A sharp, C sharp, D sharp, F sharp, G sharp, and the enharmonic equivalents, where the enharmonic equivalent of C sharp is D flat. And that's just something,
Just means there's two names for the same note.
it's a homophone or homonym. Is that
Yeah.
right? It's like a homonym.
Homophone.
Lord.
It's one of those.
Yeah. But that is also an oversimplification because there are many, even within like this style of, even in Western musical notation, there are vast amounts of tuning philosophies and practices: equal temperament, just intonation. The list goes on. Pianos use something called equal temperament, which means, well, since the pitches are fixed on a piano, I mean, you're going to have to make a decision as to what exactly you're going to call, how many frequencies you're going to, or not how many frequencies, which fundamental frequency you're going to attribute to A, or like etc. How are you going to tune it? Like, so you just divide the 12 notes, you just divide the scale equally into 12 parts. That's why it's called equal temperament. And so pianos play on equal temperament. Now, as someone who's primarily a violinist, that's never been equal temperament. Sounds out of tune to me. Playing piano sounds out of tune to me. And that's because violinists use much more flexible pitch, wherein in different keys you might actually play different notes. You would tune things differently, and you might tune things differently whether you're playing melody or harmony. You might play things differently whether you are playing it with an open string at the same time. Like the tuning that I play on violin, and I think most violinists you talk to, either they don't know anything about tuning because it just comes naturally, or will be able to tell you like, no, I don't use equal temperament or whatever. It's not even you use, like, I use what feels right with like vibrations. Like I would rather, like, I would never play with a tuner in front of me to try to match that, because that is not a true representation. Like pitch is such the concept of pitch, it's not fixed. Like it's an interpretable thing. Like there's no like one right answer, and I will use whatever is most resonant in the context. And so it might be like a few cents off, a few cents sharp or flat or whatever. And the reason I just mentioned that is just because in general, like even getting into a conversation about microtones, just know that that's obviously it's not subjective that microtones exist, because there are always going to be shades of gray. There are always going to be parts that you can further dice. And so that's objective. That is objective. But when we talk about what it should be compared to, it is worth thinking of what we would consider the 0 microtones off version, because that might depend based on your personal tuning philosophy. It would be different whether you're playing it on a piano or having a violinist play it. Like violinists tend to raise the leading tone of things slightly, will tend to, flatten something slightly, flatten thirds slightly, especially like if you're harmonizing with an open string. Like there are just certain things that I would have to think about before even knowing, because it's not conscious. It's just totally like, and it's just what you do. Like if you play a third in a major key, exactly in equal temperament, like if I did that for my violin teacher, he would say that it was flat, like, or something. Like you tend to like raise thirds or like lower thirds if you're playing in a minor key. Like it's all so subjective, and it's a fascinating topic to talk about, and it's highly relevant to thinking about or constructing imaginary realities of like in-universe philosophies and musical practices, and even written practices, which is very in line with what both of us are interested in.
Right. And speaking to that, I think that because you just addressed even talking about Western classical music and its tuning, you have many different tuning systems that were used at different time periods and in different places and in different contexts. And then on top of that, outside of Europe and even parts of Europe, there are also musical traditions that have distinct, meaningful differences between notes that are smaller than 12 notes in a scale.
Absolutely.
So they would have more notes. Turkey, yes.
Has like 100 notes or something.
Southern classical Indian music has various scales that you use contextually within a melody, where you will actually switch what set of tunings you use for the notes depending on whether you are going up or down, in what part of the song, in what part of the, and what emotion you're supposed to evoke, and all of these different rules that are not present in most in most of our pop music. And so so then to imagine how do we notate this for ourselves, and then in their universe, are two completely different questions too.
Yes.
Because and do we use, would it be better to use a different system for notating music to write down this song? Maybe, because I had to make concessions to get it close.
Yeah, like I should give a little bit of background. Like, first of all, what an incredible feat Ender accomplished. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm just like holding up some sheet music that I printed out that that Ender like transcribed. Okay, he did lead sheet versions that have like the lyrics, like the melody with chords. And then there's also like a score version that, like has to the different parts, strings, electric piano, bells, drum machine. Okay. So, wow. I was like blown away that you did that, first of all. I just like hand wrote the string parts. Because that's what I can do. And so that's the point of reference that we're making when we're talking about the sheet music. You also did a version that was in like a half step down. Was that for analysis purposes?
That's for analysis purposes, and it's easier for me to play the chords with a capo on the first fret of a guitar. That one's for me to play guitar too.
That's a great example. That's a great. Okay, that will come up later. Okay. So in transcribing this, like this is this was something that we are able to refer to and have like a common basis, so that we're not just being like, that part where it's like, it's always helpful to like have some sort of a starting point or like some common reference point. And the way that on the lead sheet that you have a little note at the top that says a little flat microtonal, and then there are certain notes or there are certain sections where, or is it on this version or is it on a different version?
It should be on both of them. The first line
where you indicate where things are even more flat.
Oh, actually, that was an older version.
Yeah, that was
very specific in how many and how many cents flat each note should be, and I decided that for the sake of clarity, that was actually too much data, too much specificity, because, like you said, where is even the starting point for counting those cents flat?
Now I'm remembering our Twitter exchange. Okay, right. You were like, maybe that was too much detail. And then I was thinking like, by the way, cent is just like, how do I say? It's a unit.
Half step.
It's like a unit of measurement. And we're not being exact when we say it's like, 5.5 cents or whatever. Like, but it kind of gives you a sense of like maybe how many degrees off a note is or something. It's yeah. So what was I saying? Oh yeah. Okay. I'm recalling our Twitter exchange where you were like, maybe that was too much detail. And then this is like, gets into a big conversation of like, well, who is the sheet music for? Because for some people it might not be too much detail. And for other people, it might be too much detail. But it is always interesting. Like I think of sheet music, or I think of the transcriber. When a transcriber makes sheet music, I think it's like at least it's a snapshot of a manifesto of a set of values and beliefs about, or hypotheses, really, not necessarily fixed in any sense, but like hypotheses. You're making a temporary like hypothesis as to what you imagine the reality to be, or like what you value in the music, because there is there is this like theory of or there's this concept of notational perspective. I think it is Dr. Sandeep Bhagwati, where like not only how you write the music, but like the notation system that you use reflects the cultural values, or it reflects something like the way that what you consider music almost.
Right. Well, and you'll see in that sheet music, I chose a jazz font for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that even reflects my vantage point of how I want this to, how I'm interpreting the music. The choice to do a lead sheet, the choice to notate it the way I do,
Yeah.
All of those choices reflect decisions made, even if they were invisible at the time that I was making them.
So here are like different ways that I can imagine sheet music going. One would be like for an archivist or for someone analyzing performance practices, I feel like the details are relevant. Or they're not necessarily irrelevant. It would just like whatever data you provide is like what gets analyzed. That's how research, that's how analysis works for all its good and bad. And for a performer, that question becomes very interesting because I can imagine like the sheet music for the strings or something, assuming, let's forget about the fact that it's probably sampled, in universe sampled. But if the strings are written for this, I would almost imagine that the string parts are like meticulously written, and then the vocal parts are just really loosely, just like maybe even lyrics with some, with like kind of like your lead sheet, with maybe not even like some of it feels so up to interpretation. What would be very fascinating is to hear a cover of this song and to hear how someone else would perform it. That would inform like what is perhaps the fixed elements of the music and what is perhaps the variable aspects of the music.
Right. And that's why I ended up making, 3 or 4 different versions of the lead sheet even, because and I only included a few of them. But there's a shorter one that doesn't account for as many of the it sets forth what I perceive as the canonical melodies rather than the embellished melodies of this particular performer. And that's a it's a choice to do, and so it doesn't. The reason.
What would you consider, or maybe let me just look at the sheet music and see how, if I think it's clear. It's not like I'm testing you. I just don't want to make you have to like sing this whole thing.
Oh yeah.
I'm trying to. Oh yeah, the parts that are smaller are the parts that you think are. Oh no, never mind.
No, the parts that are smaller are actually the second singer. I think.
It's when the note head is an X.
Yeah. Well, and that's because I think that's. Yeah, so for the second verse, basically the second verse in its entirety is, I think, much more interpretive in my view. And so the X'd notes are ones that are
Let's listen to some
approximate notes. They're just approximate notes.
I think it'll be obvious when people hear it. It's like when it sounds like she's more like sighing or something. Like that.
Right.
And then his part is always pretty much fixed. So that would be interpretive. This would be fixed because they have to stay in tight harmonies.
Right.
I love that note. I love the string part. Okay, got sidetracked.
Yes. So, so there's, but the thing is that that is a decision that I'm making to interpret those side notes as less canonical, because it
Right.
could very well be in their musical practice that that is meant to be sung precisely the way that she sang
Yeah.
it.
Right. 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 Yeah. I mean, this is also how a similar thing happens like when we translate poetry from other languages. Like that's why you can have like the same like Rumi poem, 100 different versions by different English translators who not only might pick different words, but might order things in a different way or might pick up different essences of each line. And that's like what you're
Yeah.
doing when you are transcribing something, because sheet music or like notation in general in what's it called? Like English language and not musical language too. It can be prescriptive or it can be descriptive. And so when transcribing something for the purpose of like accuracy to what we have already heard, that's making sheet music for descriptive purposes, not for prescriptive purposes, which is like the type of sheet music that you would give to someone before they get on stage. They have to like read the sheet music for performance purposes. You would put in not vastly, but sometimes vastly, you would put in like a lot more information of a certain type and a lot less information of another type. Like if you're giving it to a violinist, like when I wrote up my violin parts, I should probably, let me just screenshot that and put it on the screen. I'm like not sure how to, like, I wish listeners could see what you wrote, but I'm also not like 100% sure of like the legality of just like blasting, like putting up sheet music from, the soundtrack.
Yeah, I don't know. It's because it is for educational purposes.
That is
so
true.
I think
That is true.
that's my interpretation of fair use. I don't know.
That's true. I mean, we're not like uploading it to sell it or anything. Because like I wonder if there's I want people to be able to see it. Okay.
I am okay with you, posting it as far as my permissions.
Okay.
But
Okay. Well, how about this? When this should I post it on? I'm thinking like I could post it on like an unlisted blog page or something where on my website where people, if they find it from the show notes, can see it. I could post it on Twitter on the day this episode comes out, like in photos, like if people want to see it.
I'll take the brunt of it, and I will just publish. I'll just post a YouTube video so that it'll also play along. I do have my work in progress transcription already on my YouTube channel. It's like 50 seconds of the song.
Nice. Okay. Well, listeners, either way,
So I'll do that.
There will be a link in the show notes to a way that you can see sheet music. But as you can see, like in this, like I've put on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, just like what I did of the string parts and the type of information that I put in there was more like exactly where the slides are, maybe like a little bit more detail on the rhythm and maybe like on the dynamics, which wouldn't actually be, the dynamics wouldn't be as probably important when analyzing or just when needing to like look at it for reference purposes and whatnot. But when you're playing it, like you might want those, like it would be helpful to have those details, especially since in the string parts, I'm like extrapolating from what we hear too, where the strings feel so uniform that it feels like they're not improvising. It doesn't feel like the strings are improvising at all, because it's not a soloist. When you have a soloist, there's a lot more room for improvisation, because you don't know what to compare it against. But the strings are all together, so I can assume that they are strictly reading from something, and exactly where the like exactly where they bend down at the end and things like that. So where were we? Okay, just the different types of information. And okay, another example would be the version that you did in A, and similarly, a totally different type of notation, like called tablature, which you would know as you play guitar, which would be like tablature is a type of notation that a lot of guitarists use when to play songs, and tabs will have like very little rhythmic information, if any, and not even like always. It won't even like always have the right. It won't even always have the actual notes that they're playing. It'll have the shape of the hand. It's like it's all meant to facilitate giving the player what they need in order to perform, and the needs will change depending on what you need to use sheet music for. And so tabs, like in A, if you write it in A, because A is a key that more people, it's easier to play, it's easier to conceive of. And when you play guitar, you can do something called capoing, which is where you basically cut off like part of the fretboard and you can transpose like on the fly. See, if you're watching on YouTube, Andrew's getting his guitar out, you can see like it's this like bar. You can instantly change keys by putting this capo on, but you still keep your same hand shape. So it lets you play an A minor, but put a capo on the first fret, and your mind can be thinking A minor, but what will be coming out is B flat minor because of the capo. But it wouldn't be helpful if you read a B flat minor chart in that case. That would be the wrong thing that you would need. You would need something that actually doesn't give you the right notes, like if I were playing along on the piano, but it gives you what you need to facilitate your performance.
Right. And just again, for the YouTube people, visually the difference, the first chord of the song in my transcription is like this, if I'm playing without a capo, or if I'm playing with a capo, it's just this. It's two fingers, and it's a much easier time.
Yeah, there are many reasons that you might want to do that. Like like in numbers, like using base 10 versus base something else. I don't know if that was a good analogy, but something like
I think that's pretty good.
There's a number thing you can, So, okay, we're talking about sheet music, which is a very big subject.
And the microtonal parts.
That's right. That's where you started, and then I kind of led you off onto this other tangent. I'm sorry. Do you want to listen to some of the like a key microtonal part?
Yeah. I think even the first line of the song has a really good example.
Okay, let's do it. Did we pass it?
Yeah. So right there.
Okay.
Right at the beginning, she sings G set. I'm gonna sing it down an octave. I've decided. G seta hambogo do seta ham. That second seta is flat relative to if you were to flatter than I notate it, and so I have a little marker saying play it flatter than that. But okay, so on the guitar, I have fixed frets, so I can't play in between notes because the strings cut off.
It's like a piano. You're going to be out of tune. I mean, you'll never. You have no choice once it's tuned.
Yeah, so it's. Is as close as I can get on the guitar.
Okay, let me do it on the violin.
Just playing frets directly.
I could have a lot of wiggle room here. I could go. Or I could go. Bass I can slide at will. And same with the voice. So the violin is more like the voice in that respect. And is that the note that you? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that your first time through that was pretty precisely, I think, how I hear what she's singing.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't do that on the guitar. So the guitar tells us what, in this case, can tell us what. I can't think of how
it tells us. Well, it tells us what you are conceiving of as the neutral in tune pitch,
right?
And what would be considered that if you were playing on a guitar.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be a little bit chaotic, but I'm going to play just the instrumental part so that a little karaoke.
Okay.
Okay, I think it's very fascinating that you consider that like an instance of microtonality, and I think this is just a really good. I mean, you're not. I don't think you're wrong. I'm just saying, the instruments, the tools that we have, shape how we frame, what we are interpreting. Because when I hear that, I hear what you're saying, where it is like a little bit, it could be, I definitely can vibe with the fact that it is microtonal there, but I could also just vibe with like, it's expressive intonation. It's just expressively, it's just an expressive choice where I might do that on the violin all the time. Because I can, because I don't have to stay along the standards of like a fixed pitch.
Yeah, and I think it's what I think is really fascinating with it is that considering the tools that you have for vocal production today, if they used autotune on this, you would lose that expression, or they auto-tuned it to this note, which is a bold choice to intentionally. They would have to shift it away from the correct pitch in order to get the sound that they wanted.
Both what you say about autotune is actually really important, because autotune and I mean, normally I would say autotune snaps to just whatever the normie pitch is, not quote unquote microtones, but our values shaping the way technology develops is just like a constant, keeps me up at night in the back of my mind. And the way that I hear it, like not only in the case of auto-tuning, but in other forms of quantizing, because what auto-tune is, it quantizes things to the closest desirable approximation of what we consider perfection. And in a way, notation does that too, where notation has any system of notation makes space for the things that it will need to carry, that culture or that type of music will need to carry. So when you're looking at notation that was shaped by like hundreds of years of classical music and, the emergence from like Renaissance, the emergence from church music, the emergence from whatever led to this thing that we call sheet music today in classical Western notation and even in lead sheets, just this idea of musical notation with the clef and the 5 lines and the notes that have bars and the note values and everything. And how that is also now technology, where you made these lead sheets on the computer. You made these on a computer program, because there are computer programs that give you the ability to work within this system. It perpetuates music within this system, the creation of music that fits this system. It's hard to write things that go outside of this system. Like it's hard to write things that are maybe microtonal. It's hard to, it's like a pain in the ass because the system isn't set up to hold that information elegantly. The system developed, you know, it's like evolution. Oh no, I'm getting on like a kick right now. I'm getting like an existential thing. Okay. It's like evolution. Like you use and you perpetuate the traits that are useful and that's what gets passed on. And then the traits, like maybe the extra details or like extra limbs or like whatever, the extra details in the music that become out of fashion or whatever, they don't make it to the next evolution of the thing. So this is like years of refinement. Like this type of sheet music is years of refinement and values. It's not all bad. It's amazing. It's like, it's amazing.
Right.
But,
and I think going on the evolution metaphor there, but evolution specifies things into a very specific model of success. And then if for instance you have a big ecological change to the environment around that species, adaptations that were advantageous moments ago suddenly don't have the ability to notate microtonal pitches to transition back to, you know, we have a hard time notating that because at the time that this notation was the most advantageous version for the type of music that we were writing, we didn't need microtonal notation. And now it would be useful because we are, you know, we live in a global world where there are lots of different types of music that it would be really cool to write down and share with one another. And our system of notation isn't especially equipped to do it.
And yet the infrastructure of it might be close enough to be able to adapt to it better than other types. So it's this weird thing where it's like you can't throw the whole thing out, or like you can, but like also some types of music aren't meant to be notated like this in the first place. The value of even notating something in a certain way or like is a whole other conversation. And when it comes and say there's like this huge global shift toward a different, like this huge thing, like it takes a lot, it'll still take a lot to unseat all these years of evolution in this type of notation, even if it no longer really fits every case. Now there are definitely like in new music, if you look at like, which most people don't look into it for some reason, music past the 28th century, there definitely is notation for microtone. There are ways that traditional, that like a piece of Mozart sheet music, there's definitely ways that it has expanded and can be expanded. There are many graphical, even in Western musical notations, there are many ways, but it's not as ubiquitous. And there's like, you know, like I was watching this like 12-tone video and I think he said something about like the lingua franca of they. Oh, okay. There's like a lingua franca of like English becomes the native tongue, or becomes the default, and this type of music notation also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a real possibility.
Yeah. So in Star Wars, I can imagine a lot of different types of notation that, you know, look something like this, just because in Star Wars, it's not like everything. A lot of things are still graphically modeled after Earth stuff that we are familiar with. So I don't necessarily think it would look completely, totally 100% different, but maybe different species would have different types of things notated just because of their different biology, like biological realities, meaning that they have to, like, especially singers. I'm going into tangent land, but no, it's relevant. Like singers,
actually, this is super relevant because
bring it back.
Because according to the solo visual guide, which I have pulled up here, the microphone on Arodia Ventifoli's face is a multi-vocoder that boosts her voice to non-human frequencies, it says. So is it helping her to hit those microtonal notes? Is it adding post-processing to her voice? Is it filtering her voice in some other way that we are not hearing because it's beyond human frequencies?
Oh my gosh. I think it's something that we can't hear because non-human frequencies says it all. I can't hear it.
Yes.
But the way that that's described, just like, oh
Yeah.
my God. I don't even know what it means. Like, obviously that's a layperson explanation and probably that's where the explanation begins and ends. But now I'm just curious what, if we were to take it seriously, what exactly that means and what it's doing. I'm fascinated.
I choose to take it as because there are some moments that I also notated that because of whatever filter is on her vocals, there are some audible harmonics which are extra. Describing harmonics again, that they are. Every pitch has multiple pitches in it that your brain interprets as a single note. And so some of those higher notes are loud enough in this mix to be audible. And I choose to believe that those are where she has dipped down from whatever beyond human audible frequencies. There are some notes that
like that's the crossover where it's both for the other species and also we can also kind of get a taste of it because it's the up. Okay, so maybe it boosts it to frequencies that are higher because we're hearing the bottom end of the high. Okay, yeah, I like that.
That's how I've chosen.
I like that
to read that.
I like that. I wonder if it's very very small creatures. I wonder. Maybe it's like cats.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yes, she is singing for cats. That's.
Oh my gosh, that's chaotic. I like it, and I like that it's vague enough that it's still fun to not have the concept ruined.
Yeah.
Okay, so chicken in the pot. I can't remember. Is there anything that you feel like we didn't cover regarding chicken in the pot?
Is it French diegetic strings, title, Louis Prima, and oh
wait, more listener questions. Right. Okay. Why is it called? What are the lyrics? Is the language songs French? We covered a lot of this. Was there any sort of translation formula used for the lyrics? Is it backwards or transposed English, or every other word is Portuguese and Korean, or something equally silly? I think we covered that.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
But no.
What genre would we put this song into if it were real? We covered that. Where are the strings coming from? Why does it absolutely slap? What is a chicken?
Well, so I have one thing to add on that.
Okay.
Why does it absolutely slap? I think part of it, I mean, there's lots of reasons. The funky bass is a big part. I
Literally
think.
Slaps, yeah.
Yes. But then also I think that the rhythm of the chords being played, the chord changes don't all happen on the one. They don't all happen on the first beat of a measure. So it's the second chord. Sorry, the third chord comes in one beat before, or part of a beat before the downbeat of the measure. So it's if we count this in four, it's 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. Mm-hmm. So that third one came in before the beat, and I think that has an effect on the way that I groove to it.
So that's why it slaps for you, maybe.
Yeah. That's one part of it. That it's just it by anticipating the beat on that change. It, I don't know. I'm not. I just know what I like.
And I mean, this is an eternal question.
That happens, right?
This is This is like a big question. Why does it absolutely slap? I mean, how would we even answer that? Because it's so It's so, and don't worry, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not taking it serious well, I am taking it seriously, but so seriously that there's no answer to it. Because I think for me, I don't know why it makes, like we said, I don't even know what I'm noticing. I can't even, I don't even have I don't know enough to know about what I am noticing. I just don't know anything really. I don't know. I don't know why I like things. But I think but if I were to guess, I think it absolutely slaps because there is repetition. There is enough that's familiar and enough that feels novel. So there's enough to make me feel safe in listening to it. Like there's enough to make me feel like there's a predictable groove to it, which is definitely important. Like, and yet there's something about it that makes me curious where I'm like, I want to hear that again, where it's like a seductive, the seductive unknown paired with the known, if it were too plain and simple and just something I've heard a million, it's too generic, that wouldn't hold my attention. If it were too out there, it wouldn't hold my attention. But it's like enough of both that it just makes me curious.
Yeah, I like that. Wait, hold on. There was something I remembered from earlier that I wanted to clarify, and now I've forgotten it, so we will move on.
So Alex Cunningham on Discord, on my Discord server, asked, was the choice of a slinky feminine voice with monstrous masculine voice a deliberate or accidental Jabba's palace reference? Well, I mean, we know from production that it was like kind of just a last minute.
Yeah, I mean, it was a vibes thing. They
a vibes thing.
That they thought that it would be funnier. I think that there's a joke in it because both voices that they considered
are extremes.
Are extremes, right? And so I think there's supposed to be something shocking about when you hear a high pitched voice come out of that mouth, or when you hear a very, very deep voice come out of that mouth, preceded immediately by somebody who clearly knows how to sing really, well, and that looks like part of our cultural model of what a singer looks like, and then switching to this thing in a jar, and then you don't know how to expect it to sing. And so I think, and that's why for me, like, that was the moment where I was like, this is working for me now. This whole movie, I am on board because they are willing to do this really strange thing, and a part of it is that it's like, I was not expecting that,
Okay, well, this is a good tie into I think this is the last question. Well, first of all, I will go back to the fact that I, again, didn't know. It didn't occur to me that they were singing live when I saw the movie. And it might be the sound mixing. It might be the thing covering her mouth. But it definitely, to me, looked like swaying to some club music that people are playing. That's what it looked like to me. It doesn't look like a performance to me. It looks like a lip syncing thing. And I don't know why, but the other place that we see this sort of thing is in what I've seen of the Galactic Star Cruiser, where there is a singer and a DJ, but the band is like, they're clearly playing to backing tracks, and there's also no band.
There's one band member in some songs.
Okay.
Because I'm super duper interested in
What do they
universe instruments. They play a Halixet.
Okay, yeah.
It's just an electric guitar.
Oh.
Yeah, it's kind of disappointing. that was my reaction.
Well, see, here's my thing. Is like, I want to cosplay as different people that play instruments. Like, I want to cosplay as Max Rebo for sure, but like building that suit will be a little bit hard. But I want to cosplay as Sabe from the Queen trilogy, and Sabe plays the Halixet. Now,
yes,
the way that And Cal Kestis plays the Halixet from Jedi Fallen Order, but I've never played that game, so I don't know how it is in there. But the way that it's described with Sabe is, before I knew what a Halixet was, the way it was described with her training and everything, it sounded kind of almost like a violin equivalent in the rigor and like first chair, like, and all that. Like, you know, she was always second chair, and like that sounds like violin culture. So I was actually surprised to find out that it was like more played like a guitar. But still, that's fine. Like, I'm still willing to play that, but I would want it to be like on an instrument that is made to look not just like an electric guitar.
Yeah.
You know?
So the one in here's the history of Halixets that have appeared in things. It's a tangent, but I love it.
Let's do it.
Is it Infra Blue Leadbelly Coggins, who plays in Maz's Castle? Plays a Halixet with a bow, but he's holding it.
Yeah, I remember that.
But he's holding it like a guitar, like in the position of a guitar, but he's bowing it.
Oh.
Oh,
okay. Like.
Yeah.
Oh,
and then it appears in Jedi Fallen Order, and the way that one is strung, there's no way that it would be playable.
Oh.
I think. I think. But then the one in Jedi Fallen Order, they redesigned several parts of it so that it would make sense to play. It's actually a different design of the instrument. And then there is a third design of the instrument on the Halcyon Galactic Star Cruiser thing. So there you go. There's 3 distinct versions, and I would err toward I've talked about this a few times on Twitter, that I kind of want to start a Patreon of building a Halixet, because I would like to have one. And so people would theoretically pay me to waste my time coming up with how you would build one.
Well, you could do it. Well, anyway, you could do 3D printing designs, and you could share those.
Mm-hmm.
So, this goes to the last question of, see, and then I went to Twitter to find if there were any questions that we missed. And so here we are. Okay. Why is it okay to call the chicken when Obi-Wan had to replace Goose with Bantha? Okay. I don't know what that one was.
He says a wild bantha chase instead of a wild goose chase. So why are they allowed to say chicken here? And it's because chickens canonically exist on the planets Takodana, Endor, and Batu. Who knows?
Okay.
Some Earth animals exist in Star Wars.
Bruce at Hey Bruce Wright said, more of a comment than a question. Chicken in the pot is like a theme for a James Bond movie in the Star Wars universe, and I want that movie. I think that I totally feel that, like, because I think the strings lend themselves to that style of, like, I think it's James Bond style scoring. Like, those strings really feel like they could be from a James Bond movie.
Yeah, actually, is this similar to James Bond intro music, especially
I think so.
where they have a singer and then they have bits of the score woven through? I think, yeah,
I hear that.
I think
I hear that for sure. Someone said, and this goes to another thing that I was going to say about how canonically Arodia is famous, or if not famous, a best-selling recording artist, it says, right? And I just want to say that I don't think that she is famous. I think she might be a best-selling recording artist, but I don't think she's famous, because no one in the room is like fawning over her. And obviously I'm making a lot of assumptions, but like, I also, like, my hot take is that Max Rebo is not canonically famous. Like, he's not that famous.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he's just like he's just a regular at
yeah,
he's entertainment. And Arodia is being paid big bucks because she's probably more higher status than Max Rebo, probably, but not famous, not famous, you know?
Yeah. So the other thing canonically about Luleo Primoc is that he's he was chart topping singer in the years before the Clone Wars, and now
He's doing his Vegas residency, or he's doing his like Vegas act.
Yes, this is his Vegas act, and he
Yeah.
is literally what he is floating in is formaldehyde
Oh my god.
that is literally preserving him beyond his
Oh my
golden
God.
years.
Well, his voice sounds
Which-
good though.
Yeah, all things considered, he sounds great.
Wow. That's
Wow. Yeah, he was apparently a star of. He was starred in a series of old Hollow movies, while wearing a dashing humanoid exosuit.
Yeah, I saw that.
So yeah,
That's funny. That's a little bit like Rio wearing a suit, right? Wearing a
yeah, I guess so. Except
yeah,
I think this would be like a robotic.
yeah.
Like
well, there's probably like something to preserve. I don't know if he has to be in water or like be in liquid to survive. I don't know. But
I'm not sure.
Magna Tolvin on Twitter asked us, as this was a rare collab duet between big stars, Arodia Ventafoli and Luleo Primoc, what do you think their individual music styles sounded like? Who do you think would be comparable in real life for each?
Yes, good questions. Do you mind if I
Yeah,
take
go
this
for
one
it.
first? Yeah. I think that so in the case of if I kind of like your idea of she's a best-selling recording artist, but not necessarily. I mean, because there's like 8 different ways that you can interpret that. Because on the one hand, she could be a recording artist in that she doesn't write her own songs, or she could be a recording artist in that she's a session musician,
I don't think so.
No,
She's not a session musician. She's a star. But like, I don't mean like famous star. I mean, she seems like a soloist. But and I think recording artist tends to refer to your own music, not necessarily that you wrote, but that is billed to you, to your name. So I believe that, but maybe like on the adult new age charts, like something like not famous, but like famous for a lounge singer. Yeah, successful.
Right. Successful, but not necessarily a household name, but maybe your mom knows who they are.
Yeah. Or like yacht people know who they are. Or maybe there's like a strict or maybe like maybe she is super, super famous and somehow has this gig and it just happens to be like, which she is. She's there. She has a residency there, right? So maybe it's old hat. But just knowing from my experience playing and stuff, if you truly famous, it like never gets old for people. If like that were someone who was YouTube famous, like, yeah. But I don't know who I would consider that, but I think that's probably her style, and I think that's probably the style that she prefers. But I also think she probably is she probably sings in a lot of different genres.
Yeah. I would think that this is music chosen for this audience, for this venue. You choose what types of songs you play based on who's on what your venue is and who your audience is. So this is probably what a bunch of imperial officers think is very classy, because we see several imperial officers in this audience.
Yeah. Plus, she's not doing a show. She is kind of doing a show, but she's also like entertaining, just a gathering, like.
Right.
She's
entertaining. So I want to say a few things about the setting and things about this, because something that I noticed this time, and I think is supposed to clue us in. You mentioned not being able to tell that she was performing, and the microphone has a circle on it on the front that lights up when they sing, and that's true for both of the singers.
Okay.
So that's one thing
cool.
where I think that is, and I think it may have been added in post, And I wonder if it was added because it wasn't clear enough that she was singing,
Mm.
and they wanted to have some sort of visual indication
I would
to
totally
close that
believe that.
gap.
I would totally
I would
believe
believe
that
it
because
because
it
it's
is a
just a
gap for
little
me.
glow, a little blue glow that comes
Yeah.
on and off, and
Not seeing mouths. I mean, we know from like mask wearing now, it's like it's sometimes just hard to understand when things are happening with people's
mhm.
mouths if you can't see their
How
mouth.
much visual processing goes into our ability to hear things?
Yeah, and
You
because
know,
it sounds so polished, it was hard for me to if it sounded super rough, um that would maybe tip me off more easily. This is so smooth and just I don't know.
so then there's another thing that I think this. I'm only mentioning visual things that relate to what we hear specifically, if I can,
Mm-hmm.
and that's that. How did I write this down? I said so. This is more visible in the trailer, but it's also visible very, very, very briefly at the tail end of one shot. That there are people, non-dancers, doing a dance and not merely dancing.
Oh.
They are doing a social dance. Like they all
Like
know
partner
the
dancing?
steps.
Or okay.
Yes, partner dancing. And they all know the steps and like because there's a motion that all of them do, like 8 couples do this motion roughly in time with the music.
So they all raise their arms up to their head at the same time. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Do you know what lyric?
And oh, I don't know. I'll try to find you because I think they're doing a looping dance because I'm guessing that they're just extras who are told here's the steps, keep repeating it for the whole time that we filmed the scene.
Wow. Maybe this is what they're learning on the Halcyon when they're square dancing.
Yes.
That's interesting. We're like watching the time warp, basically.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, and I think that's because we've seen backup singers and dancers in Jabba's palace.
Yeah,
but I
that's
don't
choreo.
think that we have seen people socially dancing.
Yeah,
and
I don't think so.
And not just dancing with partners, but doing a known dance that multiple people know the steps to.
I mean, it could also be this is the dance. You know, like those dances that have, or those songs that have like lyrics in them where like everyone does something at the same lyric. And sometimes it comes from the music video where like they do something in a music video. And so like everyone knows this move from the music video, but she's not doing it on. So maybe
no, she doesn't do it.
I like this social dance idea. I like that. Okay.
Anyway, that's
very interesting.
Another thing about Chicken in the Pot, I think.
I hope we see that. I hope we see that dance again somewhere. Like maybe it's the kind of thing where, you know, you could put it with any music of a certain collection of genres or whatever, or same. Wow. All right. Well, that's cool. So final question, and I want us to answer at the same time, or final question about Chicken in the Pot. And I want us to both answer it because we might have different answers. Who knows? But let's answer at the same time because we haven't discussed this in advance. So, the question is, do you prefer the high or lower pitched version? And so, okay, if you prefer higher, say high, and if you prefer low, say low. And I'm going to count to, I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, go. And so where go would be, that's when you say it. You know what I mean? So like 3, 2, 1, say it. 3, 2, 1.
Low.
High. Interesting.
I like what I can't have. And
wait, meaning because it wasn't on the soundtrack for a while?
It wasn't on the soundtrack, and so I couldn't listen to that version of it until the movie came out. and then years later, when the second version of the album came out, because it was the same thing with the Imperial Recruitment cue, the diegetic version of that, where I was like, okay, but I need this version of it, please.
Yeah, you have to wait 2 years.
Right.
I predicted that you would say low.
Okay,
Just gonna say that.
I am a bass singer. I'm a bass or baritone, and so for me, it's also like I can't sing either part in the album version, but I can sing. But I can sing in the expanded album or extended, whatever it is.
Okay.
Yeah, well, so it's also just a vocal range thing.
Listeners, anywhere on YouTube or Twitter or whatever, just tell us, do you prefer the high or low? I prefer the high.
Yes, I would be interested to know.
But I am very curious. And I'm curious what
Why
guides
do you
those.
prefer the high?
I don't know. I just prefer it. I just like it. I've always liked it better. I almost can't listen to the low version. Now I can because I'm more used to it. But like, I strongly prefer the high version.
Yeah.
And it might be just because that is what I had to listen to. And so I like what I had. And since it didn't have probably as immediate of an impact when watching it in the film, it didn't have definitely not as lasting of an impact on me as it did on you after watching the film, just because I had trouble connecting what was going on.
Right.
And then when I heard the album, I don't think I was like, it still struck me as like the same song because I was paying attention to the lead. And I didn't really remember the difference of the low voice because I don't think I was like, I think if I had connected on screen, oh wow, that voice is coming from this chicken. And like, if I had made some sort of a connection, then hearing it on the soundtrack, I might've been like, oh, that's not what I remember from when I noticed that it was coming out of the chicken, but I didn't notice that. So it just all was a track.
Right. So I think in relation to that, I opted just to not listen to the song. I love the song, and I just refused to listen to the other version.
You probably would have ended up liking the high version if you had listened to it more, and so you saved yourself. Yeah. That's hilarious. That is so funny. I also think another thing is that I tend to prefer higher pitched things, and I think also it goes back to vocal range, like just personal. I think I don't know if this is scientifically supported in any sense, but I think we like what we ourselves produce, or like, we're comfortable, or at least I guess what I'll say is like, if not necessarily like, because I don't think the average person just like is in love with their own voice. I think it's more that like, because this is the range that I speak in, I just have a lot more clarity regarding like in all in this range. Like I can interpret it easier. It's easier for me to listen to because I speak it. And on the violin, I also play in this like range. And I just have a lot more shades of like, there's just so much more depth for me in this range. And it's just a richer place that I'm just more comfortable, more used to differentiating between. Low stuff to me, like I joke, like I'm kind of kidding because it's not this extreme, but like to me, low stuff sometimes goes into the like, oh yeah, low stuff category. Like where I don't listen to enough low stuff that my categories get smaller, when we're thinking of lower pitch instruments or lower voices or bass singers or whatnot. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I play bass and guitar and cello and lots of low instruments also, or instruments that at least have a low end, whereas violin mostly, and I play piano some, and and I think a lot of the music that I listen to has a lot of guitar in it, for instance.
I always turn bass down when I listen to music.
That's wild. I want to be able to hear it because I want to be able to track that.
Right, which I'm actually like uniquely bad at I'm pretty bad at transcribing bass parts just because it just takes more focus for me to listen to it, put it that way. Like I have to really focus and be like, okay, I'm listening for the bass. Where I can pick out the higher pitch stuff, the vocals, the strings, like almost effortless. Like I don't have to pay attention. That's because that sticks out to me so obviously. And yeah, I always think it's interesting to ask people. And so far on the show, talking to people, not to like make big, I don't know, claims to lump people in too much, but like there have been some patterns based on what people pick up on and what people don't. And a lot of the time people with bass voices pick up on way more bass than I do.
Yeah,
or,
well, and
or
it's
we'll
also,
say that they like the Emperor's theme, or like we'll pick out like Snoke's theme, like we'll pick out parts of the score where I'm like, yeah, that's cool, but like, I guess I just like have never really put that on repeat. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a solid hypothesis in there.
Yeah, perhaps.
I'd read it.
I would be
that
very
study.
interested. Yeah, if someone has a study, like if someone, yeah, please link us. We're into that. All right, so finally we have finished talking about chicken in the pot. So would you like to cover, like now we can just talk about the rest of the minutes?
Yeah. I'm gonna breeze through some of my notes
Please.
because I wrote too many notes.
Breeze through them.
I like the ambient wind and snow crunch Foley work
At the beginning.
That's done right at the beginning.
Okay, let's hear some of that.
The difference is the Empire doesn't send out a team of enforcers to hunt you down when you're a deserter. Dryden Voss will. You have any idea what it's like to live with a price on your head? The only thing to do is to go to them.
I like that you can hear the high pitch, like the.
Yes, and that it is definitely mixed around the voices, which is a very common sound design technique of, at least for the non-Dolby Atmos version, you know. Yeah, and I just like I like watching Foley work be done. If you ever find clips of people, so the Foley, for people who don't know, is specifically sounds that props and people make in the scene that it has to be dubbed in after the fact. So like boot steps and, you know, breaking glass is often Foley.
You have to perform it with the scene.
Right, you're right. There's a physical person actually holding boots and stepping in time with the actor, or with what they perceive the actor to be doing. And it's just a really fun performance art form that I like on its own merits. And so I like to imagine somebody sitting there with, like, I don't know if they were actually using snow and pressing a boot into it, or if they went and recorded in the field, you know. But it's probably, and then, yeah, all of the different things that they use in place of the real thing in order to get a sound that we will perceive in the movie as being that sound. Like a running joke in Monty Python and the Holy Grail is, rather than having horses in the movie, they're running around with a person behind them with two halves of an empty coconut, clacking them together in the pattern of horse hooves. And that's what you would do for Foley. But in the case of the movie, it's about how they didn't have a budget for horses for the movie. And so they are just doing the sound of the horses.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so what else?
And then I think this is the first cue in this minute is just after where you stopped, I think. And I think it's Beckett's gang theme. I don't know what that's called.
And that's what we do.
So if you're following along on the soundtrack, this track
No.
is called Walk to Dryden's 3M17, and it is in
Knows
fact
me, not you.
the gang theme.
If you come with me,
In a
show
little bit
your
of a
face. If they don't kill you, you're
in one of
this
the more
life for
tender iterations.
You find some way to
Yeah.
square.
Yeah, and I find it an interesting theme to use because it's about it's kind of the end of Beckett's crew because Han and Chewie were not originally part of his crew.
Mm-hmm.
All of his crew that he went into this with have died at this
Mhm.
point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's interesting that it's this slow, mournful thing. And then I wrote down that it's on the harp, and then I realized,
Valicord.
wait, is it a Valicord?
I thought the same thing.
And I think it's interesting in this particular arrangement, and I'll try to do this on the guitar. It's alternating between a G minor and an F chord, which is I read it as the minor 1 and a major 7th. And it sounds to me very, very, I guess, medieval or Celtic modality.
You mean you said G minor to F minor?
To F major.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so it goes. I can almost play it. And then it goes to C major. And then goes down. Sorry, I'm capoed again, so I can't read my guitar. But yeah, I thought that was. It's a very, very different vibe because at first I didn't recognize. At first I wrote down, whose theme is this? Because it feels familiar, but because of this particular this being very new in that context to me.
Mm-hmm. The medieval aspect of it, I wonder how much of it is also, I mean, the harp kind of is.
Oh yeah. It has
kind
a
of contributes.
lute sound. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And then the instrumentation gets warmer and fuller as the crew moves closer toward cooperation, toward reforming the crew. Is how I interpret that.
It is like a little bit, it is like a dirge version, but like also there is something, it's not all like somber.
Yeah. And then we get, how about you? And Chewie answers with a Chewbacca sound. And I kept wondering, like, is that like because then Han says that's yes, and it's always something that I wonder when we don't see subtitles for a character and a character says specifically what another character speaking another language says. But I think in this instance, I trust his translation because the music actually tells us the answer first. Chewbacca says "rar," and then the horns come in with this very warm and affirmative answer to the melody that had left off just before he answered, and it tells us that happens just before Han says that that's yes. And so I think it's for me, I feel like I trust the music more than I trust Han Solo, known not very good speaker of Shriwook, which is the Wookiee language.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm curious.
Find some way to make it up to him.
And that's what we do.
No. He knows me, not you. If you come with me, show your face. If they don't kill you, you're in this life for good.
Right here?
You
Oh, wait,
find
no.
some way to
Coming up.
square this. We still got our money.
Then it goes,
Maybe.
not yet.
For me, it's worth the risk. How about you? That's yes.
I feel like the music says he said yes, and we could have even had Han Solo not say that. And I think that I would have understood from that scene that he answered in the affirmative.
It's interesting that the brass that comes in are like lower brass there too.
Uh-huh.
Well, I guess it's interesting in that a new character is speaking, so we're hearing like a new, I guess, instrument group or a new group of instruments, which doesn't, necessarily mean anything. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, but sometimes it.
Well, but
Sometimes
we can read meaning into it.
Exactly. So yeah. So sometimes like when something in a scene escalates, or like another person joins, or like there literally will be another voice that enters in the score, like in the music, in the orchestra.
Yeah.
So
now I want to see if Peter and the Wolf style, if the harp comes in more frequently with Beckett. Because I don't know that it has thus far, so it's probably a weak hypothesis. But if it happens again, you have to.
I'll keep an ear out. And we're actually getting to Young Han's theme here too.
Mm-hmm.
So when we get up there, Dryden Voss.
And on these shots, we get wide shots with close dialogue. And I don't think that happens very often in Star Wars. So these shots are very, very, very far away, where there's no way that we could have heard them. And the Kadyak is worldized, as in it takes place, it's very clearly coming from a place in the mix. And their voices are just here with us.
The yacht?
Oh, the Kadyak.
Kadyak.
The Kadyak. I don't know how it's said, but those are the animals.
Oh, okay, okay.
And I have written here that there was a whole deleted scene of them riding those in order to get onto the Conveyex.
Oh wow!
It's not been released, but I've seen photos from it. So, again, the movie again went through so many different stages and changes that I don't know that any of that footage is finished in even a deleted scene capacity. Like, I don't think it's cut together or anything.
Interesting. Okay.
But also, to tie it back to Canto Bight, DJ's coat is Kadyak leather.
Oh.
Which is actually, we were told that before this movie, that this movie would have been in production, so it was an intentional call forward. Anyway.
Yeah, his coat is very... I mean, another clothing thing, I guess, is Arodia's gold dress is made of the same material as Snoke's Playboy robes. So that is Arodia pile, or it's like...
yeah.
Aura pile. Well, I think it's called Aura pile.
Yes.
And I think like aura in Latin, is that like a prefix. Does that mean gold or something?
It does mean gold, yeah.
Okay, because that would make sense. It's like all gold.
Arodium is the Latin word for gold, if I'm not mistaken. And if I am mistaken, then I've just embarrassed myself.
Yeah, well, her dress and Snoke's Playboy robes are very very glittery, very rich looking. So there's, yeah, I don't think I ever really cared to. I mean, I'm looking at Erodia in a whole new light, and Snoke, and I like it. To be clear, I like this connection. I like it.
Yeah.
It's a good one. Don't know why. Can't explain it. Won't explain it. Okay, so Young Han's theme. This is the heroic variant.
On his yacht.
You're gonna know how to find it?
That won't be a problem.
Played on, I think, English horn? No, maybe?
Could be.
Now we have some...
And then
secrets! And we already got to the secrets part.
Right.
Dee. It's good.
Dun, 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 comes up next.
Yes. Mm-hmm. What do you think of that?
Is that part of the secrets theme?
Not officially.
Like, does it show up every time the secrets one plays? No?
No. But it's very reminiscent of something. What is it?
Do you know the answer and you're seeing if I know it?
No, it's like it's on the tip of my tongue, but like what is it? What is it?
So intervallically it's a minor third up, minor third down.
Yeah.
And that's
Ray.
Yeah, so that's Ray.
Emperor.
And the Emperor. Yeah. And so I choose to read it because it's more in it's less I don't know. I chose to read it as more Palpatine's theme, and I was like, is that maybe a suggestion at Dryden Voss's Dark Side Connections? Can I pretend that it is in the same way that
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that because I already recorded the episode that comes out the week after this episode, and in that scene, that's when Dryden Voss. So listeners, here's a little preview of next week. In Dryden Voss, when Dryden Voss is like, you know who I'm answering to. I was speaking with James. Well, I won't say James Hewlett. No, I already just said it. Okay, so that's the guest next week. I was speaking with James, and I was like, who is he answering to? And he was like, Maul, and I was like, yeah, but maybe there's something in the way that he is saying that where it's like something much bigger than Maul. at the end of the line, when you like go to the person above him and you go through the whole chain. I mean, I was kind of joking, but it all leads back to the Emperor.
Right. Well, and I think the Emperor's theme, through the way that motifs, is it a V when you use it plural? I don't know.
I don't know.
When you use it over and over again in different contexts, it accrues new meanings and makes new connections. And I think at this point, and I say this sadly, I think Palpatine's theme is more of a catch-all dark side, or specifically the Sith theme. I liked it being Palpatine's theme because that's just my personal preference, because this is what it was when I grew up. Is probably the real answer is that. But
see, this to me doesn't scream Palpatine to me though. It screams something at me that I don't know what it is. And honestly, maybe the answer is like it's just Dvorak or something that's not Star Wars, but I'm not really sure. It's like it's not just the intervals because. If it were vocals and lower, yeah, but it's something about the range that it's played, the rhythm, the instrument. It reminds me of something, and I don't know what it is. Listeners, do you know what
I'm gonna make one pitch,
okay.
and I think this is not it.
Okay.
but I want to give it a pass anyway.
Yeah.
Yes, it's probably not it, but I think it's also similar to The Color of the Wind
No, it's
from
not. That's not it.
Pocahontas. That's not what you were thinking, right?
No, I know.
Okay.
I know.
I guessed it wasn't.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, that's the only thing I can think of. Trying
Something
to think.
ominous. Something like ominous a little bit. It's something ominous that I'm thinking of. Oh well, maybe I'll figure it out one day. Who knows? Maybe it'll just plague me. Maybe it'll plague me. It'll probably plague me.
And there's one other sound here. So, a question:
Mhm.
Are we at Fort Ipso?
I think so. You mean, is that the name? I'm pretty sure that's the name of it.
Oh, that's the name of the place where they go to the cantina later.
You mean have we arrived there yet?
Well, like I think that they're on. I think that they are at Fort Ipso, and that is where they are getting onto the ship. I think that's.
Oh, I'm really bad at like direction. I'm really bad at understanding where we are, especially in transit, because I know we're on Vandor, and then I know that we're on a yacht, which is a yacht. It's moving.
Right. Yeah. So that's why it's so unclear. It's like this is the first time that I have ever even asked the question, where are they when they get onto the yacht? But I think I think this might be like down the stairs from the cantina at Fort Ipso. Like I think to the right of where they're getting on is the stairs up through the tusks of the thing.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I think it might be.
You might be right.
But I do not know.
But I don't know. Yeah, I can't confirm. I can't confirm. Okay. But yeah.
And I like the little machines that rattle that sound like landscaping equipment, like a lawnmower or something. And I don't know what they're doing.
This? Wait, after this?
Yeah. Yeah, okay, after the cue kind of settles down. And there's those two generators running.
Oh, yeah. I like that door sound.
It's a good door sound. They got the two doors going.
I love those doors. They're good doors. That's a Star Wars classic.
Yeah, I love the Death Star, like the ones and
the Bad Batch had some good ones too.
Oh, and I love Jabba's palace door.
Mm-hmm.
That's
different.
A great door.
Yeah, that's that's definitely a good one.
And then we'll jump, I guess, over to the beginning of the song.
Oh, to the beginning. Okay, wait, okay.
Because there's a lot of ambient dialogue, and this is another thing that
Can you hear anything?
I chose to hyper focus on every detail of these 5 minutes.
Okay.
So this is why I said I have too many notes.
Did you pick up any conversation?
There's exactly 2 lines that are in English that I can hear. And so the way that these are recorded is definitely after the fact. This is not on set dialogue.
Yeah.
Right.
What do you think of the dialogue in this? Because on Star Wars Minute podcast, they have been talking a lot this season, which I agree with a lot of the time, about this like disembodied quality to sometimes the.
So
sounds.
In this case, the 2 lines that you can definitely hear, you can also see, and
where they're
I have
coming
a pretty good guess of who, and I think they may have even lip synced, like, oh, it looks like he could be saying this here, so I will, so I'll try to match my timing to that.
Okay, wait. If we hear it, should I play from the beginning?
It's in a minute.
Okay.
But I just wanted to say there's about the recording of this, because there's a lot of voices, and my guess is that I know that Sam Witwer gets called in to record a lot of this sort of voiceover stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So and other other members of the animation casts will be in all of these scenes. I know that Sam Witwer, for different movie when you get to it, in Rogue One, he yells "Open fire" on Darth Vader.
Oh yeah, that's right.
In the
I
hallway
remember
scene
that.
at the end. Yeah. So my guess is that he's in here somewhere, and that a lot of these are Matt Wood, who's the main sound editor, I think.
Supervisor, I think.
Supervisor, yeah. And he does a lot of voices in animation and in live action of background people. So mostly you just hear ambient laughter, though, when we first get in here.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but we'll get to the lines that we can hear, because first there's hold on, her name is Margot, an Amrusian, who has a line that I transcribed. She says, "Kyle Shaun Tobias Beckett, Inca Kusante."
Is that Huttese?
And it's not Huttese, so I can only assume that it is Imarusian, which is a new Star Wars language. And I like the sound of it.
Oh, but we don't know what it means yet.
We have no idea what it means, but I'm guessing it's "Welcome, Tobias Beckett."
That sounds.
What business do
reasonable.
you have? What business do you have here? Because that's kind of how he answers. He's like, "I got an appointment to see Dryden Voss. He knows I'm here. He knows I'm coming." Something like that.
Wow. Maybe we'll have a whole vocabulary, maybe we'll have a whole language built out for that one day.
Yeah.
Who knows? I like the sound of it. Is there anything else from these minutes that you have notes on? I'm sure you do.
Yeah. Then there's finishing with the regional governor. So then she speaks English immediately.
Right.
He said, "Dryden will be with you in a moment," or something like that. He's just finishing with the regional governor. Hard cut immediately. There's no pause to him pulling out the I don't know what it is. It's a laser knife. It's a knife with lightning on the edge of it. I don't know.
Laser sword, laser knife.
It's probably got a cool name. But I think that it also has some strong dark side vibes to it. It has a very Kylo Ren's lightsaber sort of growl to it when he pulls it out. It's got a nice like sort of sound.
Ferocity.
Mm-hmm. And then it has a kind of glassy idling sound as it's just sitting there not being used. And I think that's interesting that it makes that, like lightsabers, it has an idle sound and a striking sound that are separate.
That is interesting.
Because most things in the real world
don't have an idle sound.
Don't have an idle sound that's different than, I guess maybe it's comparable to like a chainsaw does, like, I don't know. And also, this is the first time that we see Dryden Voss in this movie.
Yes.
So about him, he was supposed to be one of the lion head creatures, or maybe one of the bird creatures who walks around downstairs. And they changed that when they reshot the movie. When they reshot portions of the movie, they reshot most of this character. And I think that he's a very good villain because he has really good. I like so there's a detail this is not audible, but I just
his visual.
Say it. About his facial striation things.
Yeah.
They change color with his mood.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love the idea that it retroactively puts this on the performance, because that is all added in post. all of it. He didn't have any special makeup on even to indicate those stripes. But that it adds this to what I perceive of the performance of he is constantly trying to keep his emotions in check in order to not give away too much. So his poker face goes deeper than just literally his face, but he has to actually keep his internal, he has to regulate his emotions in order to keep the upper hand on
and
on the
perhaps
people that he's trying to.
And perhaps that's one of Kira's big strengths in this partnership. I mean, obviously she has a lot of talents and a lot of ways that she adds, but this is definitely like one way that she facilitates his leadership, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point, because she'll later, probably
she
next
calms
week,
him down. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she consistently is like, actually,
yeah,
maybe there's
she's the
something
emotional
else than just
liaison.
murdering.
I need that.
But the other thing, just finishing with the regional governor, and in A New Hope, the regional governors will now have direct control over their star system.
Yeah.
So this
like
is indicating,
I mean,
right? So this is also showing his relative power at this time in the history of the galaxy, that he is finishing with the regional governor by murdering a regional governor who in 10 years or whatever it is
we'll have a Star Destroyer.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good detail.
So he is in a position of great power as the head of the crime syndicate.
It shows really quickly. Yeah, it's a quick way to communicate that.
And that he has no fear of the Empire's appointed people.
Right.
You know, he will kill an Imperial officer like it's nothing.
Yeah. At least during this time period.
At least during this time period,
not that we'll get much more of him later, but you know, right. At least during this time period. Yeah, that's a good point. I also think he's, I've never really thought of whether he's a good villain or not for me, but I think he is because the actor.
I mean,
because he's unpredictable. Because I think he's just such a loose. He's scary because he's just so unpredictable. I think, like,
yeah,
I think
he has to control himself.
Yeah, and I think
he will lose control.
Yes. You know? And there's something about the juxtaposition of this like fine dining and like drinking and setup of it being a nice situation where there's amenities and everything while being like, I might kill you right now.
Right. Yeah, he has, and he collects all of these ancient artifacts, and he collects all of these things, which, so if we go to, let me try and get you a specific timestamp real quick, because I wrote these down in one place but not another. For the dialogue that we can hear.
Oh.
It's just after starting at 3:45.
Okay.
So I guess technically minute 43. Minute 43-ish.
Okay. I'm going to start right there and listening for the dialogue.
Yes, so the dialogue to hear, and here's what's interesting is I think we're supposed to hear both of these lines.
Yeah, I think so too, because after you said them, I heard those too.
Yeah, so there's one that's you smell that is one of them, which I think is referring to Chewbacca.
Oh, you hadn't even said that. Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah.
And then there's one that's, have you seen and I think the word there is collection. referring to Dryden Voss's collection, and that's why I think that we're supposed to hear it and not just it's supposed to be maybe hearable, like
Okay,
that
I'm
if you hear it,
I'm so curious now because I don't remember. Oh wait, let's just hear.
I get all worked up, silly. It's a party.
Hey, these people are not your friends. They're never gonna be, so don't talk to any of them. Don't look at anybody, just keep your eyes down.
It's not yet. It's not until he's walking through the party.
Okay.
Get a drink.
So now listen.
Smell that. Collection in the left ear. Yeah.
And then there's
And they're both on
Uskoshka in Huttese.
Okay. What does that mean?
Right there. Don't know, but it's definitely Huttese phonemes.
Yeah, I did hear those. Both those bits of dialogue were on the left. So
yeah, and I think they're supposed to be possibly audible in the mix. Like you're not.
They
you don't
sound.
have to hear them.
I think they sound plucked out. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, not for sure, but like I would agree with you on that.
And then there's a tiny alien eating a cracker. And
what's the cracker called?
I don't know.
Me neither.
I wish I knew, but yeah. And then we get to the other music cue as the song ends.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Because we do get
the pot ends.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Chewie, would you please?
And the ambience drops away.
Yeah.
And then it swells back in. The ambience actually starts to come back in over the course of the scene. It's just for that moment of emotion.
Yep. Of like the room, everything blacks out except Kira.
Right.
Let's hear that again.
What are you doing here?
I work here. What's your excuse?
Kira, I was.
So this is Han and Kira theme, of course.
I'm already a deserter.
Okay, that's me. Han and Kira theme, and in a very lush string arrangement of it. Like it's a very earnest cue.
Mm-hmm.
And we have heard it before, but just not quite like this. And this is the track called Han and Kira Reunite 3M19 on the deluxe edition of the soundtrack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I had some notes about this theme, and that I would argue it's very Star Warsy and very John Williams more broadly, which is that there's this thing that so as I try to play Star Wars music on the guitar, which is not particularly advisable. It's trying to compress John Williams into guitar is just, it's way too polyphonic to work most of the time, unless you're a very good classical guitarist, which I am not. But so for Kira's theme, so I think about it in lots of, I try to figure out the underlying chord progression, you know, because that's the idiom that I know. And so it's I think we're in D.
Yeah, we are.
Oh, sorry, that's the wrong chord. So I have that as a D with suspensions. And then E minor, and then B flat diminished 7 before resolving back to D. And then by comparison, Leia's theme, if I play it in D, is D, B flat diminished 7. And it's this particular that particular motion feels very Star Warsy to me, and a very specific type of sentimental romanticism
Yeah.
that John Williams evokes. And then in Han Solo and the Princess, there's wait, how's that one?
Yeah, that's a do dee 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 dee.
Yeah. Da, 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 da,
Mm-hmm.
da. And then it changes keys. Da. That's not right. Anyway, and then in Raiders of the Lost Ark,
Mm-hmm. Marion's theme.
Marion's theme has a very, very, very similar.
Mm-hmm.
I can't play it very well.
Yeah,
but-
for sure.
Yeah, and so this particular motion of the D in relation to, I think specifically the flat 6 note, the B flat in the next chord, because sometimes I think some of those might be G minors rather than diminished chords.
Yeah, they're related, but too long to get into that.
It's
But yeah,
close, yeah. The point is, it's a very John Williams-y sound to me.
yes. I mean, I would definitely agree with you. I'll also
but
add
in
the
a new
Hera.
position.
Yeah. I'll also add the Hera theme from Rebels. Goes along with that too. And also I'm trying to remember. Dee, 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 dee. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it goes dee 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 dee. Very similar.
Yep.
I mean, a different composer, but like drinking from the same Williams juice. Yeah. So
And anyway,
Anyway.
I like the Han and Kira theme. It's pretty good.
I think it's really pretty. And
I do have mixed feelings about Han and Kira as in the way that this film portrays it, because I don't exactly know how I'm supposed to feel about it, or how Han feels about it, or how he feels about the dice,
Same.
or how the dice play into Leia getting them at the end. And like, does she know that he?
I get the Leia getting at the end, because at the end it just doesn't matter. At that point, it's just such a relic. It just reminds her of him.
Yeah, it's
That's
just
how
his
I
key
explain
fob.
that.
At that point, it's just his key fob.
Yeah, you
right?
could have given her anything that belonged to him, and it could have been meaningful. I get
here's
that.
his old hat.
I
Here's his
get
hat
that.
he used to wear.
But in Solo, I think one of the reasons I don't connect with this film very much, or as a whole, because I'm not sure how I'm feeling, or because I don't know how I'm feeling. I guess what you just said is how I experience it. A lot of it too. I just, it's like I'm watching characters go through a drama, but I don't understand why they care about each other. I don't understand why people care about stuff.
Yeah.
So
I enjoy it better than Rogue One. And
I think I enjoy it about the same as Rogue One, but maybe a little bit less. But like Rogue One is also low for me.
I'm not gonna pry into people's into people's opinions about individual Star Wars movies, because people get so heated about it, and it's like, I don't know, like, I like every Star Wars movie.
Yeah. Preface it with, I like all of them. I was stoked walking out of Rogue One. I felt great about it. I really enjoyed the experience of watching it. I just don't like rewatching them. I think I'll end up rewatching. Anyway, we're not talking about Rogue One, but like, Yeah, the Star Wars stories in general, just
but
they're a little
I
bit more.
I like that the stakes of this one
were low.
were so low. No pun intended.
Yeah.
But like that, I get a kind of fatigue from we have to save the world, we have to save the universe, we have to save the galaxy every time, and sometimes I
Totally.
like it to be we need to get this coaxium
Mhm.
in order to get this price off our heads, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the extent of it. And so for me it was refreshing. I probably forgive it more than it necessarily.
Oh, I mean, I'm not mad at it.
Yeah.
I forgive it. Sure.
But I mean,
yeah.
like, I make up for its. I pave over its shortcomings, you know, because I want it to be a certain way. And I also, the other thing that I like about it is that a lot more than other ones, and I don't know if this is to do with how it's shot or the specific people involved, but there is a different kind of tactile experience that I have of like I can imagine what all of these different things feel like. I don't know. It like the objects within the story have a they read well as being, you know, they've got a lot of weird droids in this movie. They've got a lot of they've got the playing cards and all of the different credits spread out on the
Oh yeah, we
table
haven't even
later-
gotten to the
later
card
on.
game yet. That's
Yeah, you'll
gonna be a
get
whole
there.
thing. Yeah, that's gonna be a whole thing. Yeah, I will be tweeting you profusely during that time about
Yeah.
the cards and stuff. Don't worry.
Yes, I don't worry. I will tell you whether the hands that they actually play line up.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll talk. Um, well, on a kind of final note, before we get to the Star Wars music, before we revisit the Star Wars Music Minute Questionnaire, because I will tell you what you answered in the past, and you can, if you want to, add to your answers. I would. You know what? I'm going to say this for the end because I'm going to ask you the bonus question. Okay, so the themes that we heard were the gang, young Han Solo, heroic, secrets, and Han and Kira. If you're following along on the soundtrack, this is Walk to Dryden's 3M17, Chicken in the Pot 3M18S, not Chicken in the Pot plain. This is the version on the deluxe soundtrack with the low voice, and Han and Kira reunite 3M19. Yeah. And then there will be links in the show notes to a couple of the things that we discussed, including a way that you can somehow see transcriptions of the chicken in the pot stuff that we were referencing. Okay, so the final thing is we're going to revisit the Star Wars Music Minute Questionnaire, which you have already answered. And I'm going to read you your answers. You can choose to give new answers, or you can say, you know, I like that answer and stay. Okay, so question number 1 is do you want me to say your answers first, or do you want to say new answers first?
Oh, that's a good question. You can say my answers first because I just listened to the finale of the other show and I heard my answers again.
Oh, right, because I read yeah, okay. So in exactly 3 words, what does Star Wars sound like? You said California radio voiceovers.
Okay. I think that's specifically for the film Star Wars.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
I think continuing that trend, I'm just going to answer for the movie that we are currently watching.
Great.
I think that Solo sounds like I'm trying to get it down to 3 words.
It's hard.
actually close enough to John Williams.
That's funny.
Because I think that this score is I was honestly a little bit disappointed by the Rogue One soundtrack. I felt like it felt like a more shallow imitation of John Williams. And then I found out that he did it in like a few
A
weeks.
month, yeah, yeah.
And then I'm like, you know what? Actually, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
yeah. So, but my initial reaction was a little more disappointed, and I felt like, by comparison, I really liked how lush this soundtrack feels. By comparison, the other Rogue One felt cold to me, and I know this isn't just a compare it with Rogue One thing, but it is. This is one of our first non-John Williams scores, and this is pre-Mandalorian, so I felt like this had a warmth that I was looking for in my Star Wars soundtracks.
Cool.
So actually close enough.
Okay. Question number 2. What is something related to Star Wars music or sound that you are curious about and want to learn or want to learn more about? So previously you said that you would like to see a making of one musical cue from start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree? Do you want to keep that answer?
I might want to keep that and add to it.
Okay.
I definitely want to keep it. That's a
good
answer.
Yeah. You can. You don't have. There's no option to throw it away. It's there.
No, delete it.
Yeah.
Go back to the previous. I'll give you a clean recording of my new answer.
Oh my gosh.
You can go insert it. No. I think I would also, in addition to start to finish, the making of one cue, I would like to know about transcription in the Star Wars universe. I think that's not exactly what the question was, but
no, it's up to that's totally that's exactly
I would like to know how Bith notation works for the Cantina band. I want to see Max Rebo's charts. I want to see if he was if he reads sheet music or just plays by ear. I want to know how all of these musicians are doing it.
Let me tell you, I want to know that too. Yeah, I really do. Or I want to imagine, or I want to be part of the imagining of that world. Yeah, even just on a fan level, so I can do multiple iterations without committing. So, final question: what is a score or soundtrack that you're fond of besides anything Star Wars? Last time you said Knives Out, composed by Nathan Johnson. Do you want to add another score or soundtrack?
Yeah. I'll add one to that. That's still the one that I actually like
the most.
I listen to that to work to.
Mm-hmm.
So I listen to that over and over again, and I stand by it. It's very good. I don't know that I've listened to this outside of the movie itself, so
that's okay.
Take it with a grain of. I don't know if this album is good, but the soundtrack to M. Night Shyamalan's The Village, which was composed by James Newton Howard. There we go. That's what I was clicking through to.
I think Justin said that in a couple. You're not the first person who said that, so that means your opinion might not be totally bad. I'm just kidding.
Well, and I think you might like it, because
I liked the movie,
or you might dislike it, because it's the credits of the movie begin at the end with the featured violinist after, it does director, producer, featured violinist,
as it should be,
and then the cast.
Yeah,
the cast comes after the.
I like it already.
Yeah.
Yeah. Justin from the band batch said that one as well. Two people in such close, just 2 weeks apart, 3 weeks apart. Nice. Well, wow. Oh, bonus question is, and I'll answer it too, is what is something that related to these minutes that you would encourage listeners, and you can tailor it to any type of listener if you want, to maybe pay more attention to or to keep an ear out for next time they watch this movie?
Oh, I would say specifically just hyper focus on the fact that there is a Huttese word for hamburger, which implies that Jabba the Hutt might have eaten a hamburger at some point. And that's just great. I love that. That's
funny.
That's what I recommend.
What I will say is listen more for those violin parts, for those string parts on
Yes.
Chicken in the Pot. And if you are particularly like music, if you're particularly inclined to pay attention to this kind of thing, listen for the chords that, like the individual chords that the violins, or it's not just violins, but the violin is the top line, that they're making, because there is quite a bit of like the closeness of the way that those harmonies are stacked. It's all very much within like minor sixths and perfect fifths from like top to bottom. And I'm also, if I'm compressing the octaves at least, and you'll find a lot of like chromatic mediant relationships. And if you just were to play the string line alone, you would find a lot of like parts of the harmony that are reminiscent of other really classic Star Wars-y sounds. Like, maybe I should just play this. Like, okay. Crap. Okay. Oh God, it's such a hard part. Okay, what am I writing? Okay, sorry. A minor. It goes from A minor, F sharp major, C sharp minor, E major, D flat major. So like the Rebel. Okay.
Uh-huh.
E minor. So I'm running out of keys, so I need to go up an octave. Okay. See, the way that these like triads, it's mostly the way that these triads just like quickly move. It ends up it feels very fluid, but also off kilter at the same time. And there's a lot of chromatics playing into that, and chromatic mediant chords, and just it also feels so Star Warsian in such like a micro way, which might not be detectable because it's not in the outset and it moves so fast, and it's just one part of a track that is like seemingly in like two different modes. But yeah, I would really, I think it's just like a hidden, I think it's like a nice gem.
Yeah.
So, yeah. There we
I
go.
second it.
Cool. All right. Last thing. Where can people find you online? Ender, AurekFonts.
Hold on, I got it. AurekFonts on Twitter. And yeah, that you should probably just use that.
Yes. And definitely, yeah, people should definitely follow you for very nerdy content that we love here on Star Wars Music Minute. There will be a crossover at some point. We will collaborate on something at some point.
Yes, we have to.
We have to. Maybe on something related to musical notation. Who knows? And you can find Star Wars Music Minute on my brain can't do stuff anymore, on YouTube, on wherever you get podcasts. You can also find me on Twitter and TikTok and Instagram. You can send an email if you have a more in-depth question that you want to ask. And, maybe just like A New Hope season, I will collect them and answer some of them on the last episode. like 6 months late. So maybe that will happen. If you want to join my Discord server, you can become a patron, and the links will be in the show notes. That is all I have for today. I will not belabor this. Thank you so much, Ender. Always love talking to you.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
And listeners, thanks for sticking with us all the way through this episode. Hope you learned a lot. And may the Force be with you. Talk to you next week on Star Wars Music Minute.